Eric, I need you over here first. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for February 25th, 2020. We're going to begin our meeting as we typically do, and that's with a prayer and pledge. And we have the honor of having Jeff Jones, our chaplain for the Hendersonville Police Department, here to deliver our prayer. After he finishes, I'm going to ask you to remain standing, and then I'm going to lead us in the pledge. Thank you. Father Jones, please join us.
Let us be reminded tonight to pray for Kay as she enters into surgery tomorrow. Let us be mindful of those who grieve and weep and mourn in community for deaths or illnesses. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, thank you for another day and an opportunity to serve. Send your spirit of unity and compassion this evening. Give to those who hold public office and all employees of our city a spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose we may faithfully serve in our offices to promote the well-being of all people. Father of all, help us to grow in love. May you and us alike be pleased with our work and service for the people of this community, and on that day of our meeting you face to face, hear these words: well done, my good and faithful servant. Through the name of Jesus Christ the Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Jones. Very appreciate it very much.
Please
join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If y'all could give me 1 second.
Remember how to do it.
This is not the first technical interruption we're going to have tonight. You're staying, all right? Okay. Super. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
She just needs to learn.
Thank you. I agree. Thank you. I'm going to entertain a motion to accept the agenda, and one of the things I'd like to do is group A, B, C, D, and E under ordinances and resolutions. So if anybody would like to speak specifically on one of those, please go ahead and let us know now.
Mayor, I'll offer that amendment to resolutions A through E.
Alderman Sprouse, we have a motion to accept the agenda with a grouping of A, B, C, D, and E under ordinance and resolutions, and we have a second. Alderman Sprouse made the motion. Alderman Hayes, second? Second. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of accepting the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, all those in favor of that? Yes, it wasn't an amendment. Okay. All those in favor of accepting the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say no. We have an agenda. Appreciate that. Next, we have presentations, but we have none. And then public hearing, we have none. And then I'll entertain a motion to approve our February 11th, 2020 meeting minutes. We have a motion by Alderman Waters and a second. Second by Alderman Edwards. All those in favor of approving our meeting minutes from February 11th, 2020, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no.
Abstain.
That passed unanimously with 2 abstentions. I believe Alderman Woodcock and Alderman Petrelli. Anybody else abstaining or voting no? That passes. And next we have citizens' comments. Speakers must identify themselves by name and address. Public comment shall be limited to 5 minutes per individual, which time is not transferable to other speakers. All comments are to be directed to the presiding officer, that's me, not to aldermen, city staff, or other members of the public. Comments must address issues, not individuals or personalities. Personal attacks shall not be tolerated. Comments may support or oppose particular issues or measures but the motives of those with different views shall not be questioned or attacked. Malicious comments will not be allowed. Speeches for or against particular candidates running for public office shall not be allowed. First, we have Stephen Puckett, Sandersbury Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Stephen Puckett. I reside at 228 Sandersbury Road, Apartment A21, Hendersonville, Tennessee. Tonight, I would like to congratulate the Sumner County Commission on their vote last night to declare themselves the Supreme Court of the United States. So, if there are any citizens that would like to declare any state or federal laws or have the commission declare those unconstitutional, please reach out to your commissioner so that they can get the proper resolution brought forward. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you. Mary Burns, Roberta Drive.
That was pretty good. I want to talk to you. I want to find out what that was about. Good evening. That was interesting. Once again, I'm before you to talk trash and to remind you that the budget time and the budget cycle is coming forward. So please pay attention and help our citizens in achieving a way to help you save money and contribute towards saving the earth. You don't often hear me make those kinds of comments, but recycling is getting very, very serious. We have microplastics in our lake. Things are happening and things are changing, and we need for you to be aware of them. And I'm hoping that you'll see your way clear to make sure that the budget does include the options of recycling. And our committee this evening will have a presentation, I believe, from Alana on our next efforts to bring you valuable information. So she'll be doing, I believe, a 10-minute presentation for you this evening. I'm looking forward to it. I think she's done a great job. She's great staff, and I hope you guys recognize Alana as a valuable, valuable employee. And thank you very much. And remember to recycle.
Mary, thank you. Next is Charles Roten, Burris Avenue.
Okay, I'm going to be speaking for Marie Alexander right here. She lives at 281 at East Main Street. Marie has lived here almost 50 years, raised 2 boys here, and has 2 grandsons. One will probably live here someday. Last November, after 62 years of marriage, Mr. Alexander passed away. Marie has severe arthritis and does her best with the help of home health care to get by. Times are hard for Marie. Marie is 86 years old and wants to live here the rest of her life in peace and quiet. Marie is not against the building of pet suits on this property, nor am I. Not against building on this property, nor am I. She just wants something more compatible, so do I. When she opens the windows and doors for fresh air or sits on her patio for sun, she does not want to hear the constant barking of dogs or the smell of bags of dog feces or cat litter only feet away from her. I think we would all feel the way Marie does. Progress or growth does not have to hurt others. If this was your mother, would you vote for it? I watched a video on YouTube of Pet Sweets, the very company that we're talking about. I was told there will only be 2 or 3 dogs at a time out here, just like what y'all been told. But the video shows 25, maybe 30 dogs out there at one time. Now, this is the same company. They're telling you 2, and we're seeing 25 or 30. They have a fun time out there. There are 16 cages in the back of this building that are supposed to hold the non-social dogs. And they said there's only going to be 2 or 3 at a time out here. Well, why are you building 16 cages? What happens to the cat litter and the dog feces when it's put in the bag at the end of the day? It's put in the dumpster. Where's the dumpster? It's only a few feet from Marie's porch and back door. It may be in a plastic bag, but you know the smell still works out. Because, we all put our trash in plastic bags, and our trash cans stink. And the dumpster truck, when it comes, it's going to pick up the dumpster, pick it up, throw it over, and dump it out. And the bags will get busted. Some of them will get busted by boxes and cans and whatever, Can you imagine the smell? And we're talking as far as from here to that wall, from her house, from her door. Not her house, but her door. Developers do not have the right to bust into our neighborhood and do what they wish with no regards for our people or their property value. This board is supposed to work for the people first. I do think the city should be working with the developers to bring in good skilled jobs that require an education or skill, places where our children and grandchildren can work and make a decent wage. Hendersonville has enough low, unskilled jobs. Our people don't need to spend half their life on Vietnam Veterans Boulevard driving back and forth to work. Pet Sweets seems to be a good company, and I just don't want it in my backyard. The constant barking that you're going to hear, a dog's going to bark. Now, if one barks, they all going to bark. You can't stop them. That's what they do. And the smell. They tell you that it'll be only 2 or 3 dogs at one time on the playground. Look at the video. The video shows you that's not true. And who's to say that they can't put more out there?
Chuck,
Just
30 seconds. 30 seconds, go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, I ain't got enough time. I thought I could talk for Marie and me, but I found out I can't. The Bible tells us, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. I hope you believe this, because I know you would not want this next to your house or your family. They just picked the wrong location. Please vote no. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you. Appreciate that. Next, we have committee reports. Alderman Strauss, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you tell us what the general committee suggests as far as committee reports?
The general committee made a recommendation to this. Let me pull back up the agenda. What we have on the agenda tonight coming through general committee, items A, items C, item D, I'm sorry, not item D, item E, and item G, F and G all came through general committee and received a positive recommendation.
I'm sorry. The suggestions the general committee said as far as reports being given.
Committee reports.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the things we're looking at, if we're looking at committee reports, it really is that. It's reports of committee, and they kind of fall under 3 categories. The first is going to be action taken by the committee. Now, that could include a discussion that was held in the committee that it's felt needs to be brought forward to the board, needs to be escalated to the board. It may not result directly in action. There may not be something that's a resolution and ordinance. I think last year Mrs. Cunningham had something similar come out of finance. I had something similar come out of general a month or 2 ago, if you remember, with some HR issues. Just need to be escalated to the board level, just for the full disclosure. But the main thing is action of the committee, discussion that needs to be escalated. The second is future action of the committee when we talk about, we're going to be at the next meeting talking about this or doing that. And then the third is if someone says, we need to come in and could y'all consider discussing this at the next committee? Can we kind of informally defer something to committee? It is not open mic night just because like when I give the general committee report, it's not going to be, hey, since you're talking about this, let's talk about something in codes, and we end up having a half-hour discussion. We don't need to do that. That's when we need to say, let's put this on an item for general committee, and then we have the discussion there. Or we put it as an item in discussion at this board level. So thank you, Mayor, for asking that.
Appreciate that. Chairman Cunningham, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. All members of the Finance Committee were there tonight. We had our regularly scheduled meeting, started 30 minutes earlier. Under resolutions, we had Resolution 2020-10, resolution amending the job classification list and pay tables. That was recommended unanimously. Resolution 2020-12, resolution to transfer codes department funds in the amount of $13,500 for scanning project expenses. That was also recommended unanimously. We had, under other business, we had some discussion items. The first one was vendor relations discussions, and we just really talked about how better communication would help in that regard. But we also had a lengthy discussion about SmartWorks, about an invoice that was sent to us for them saying that we owed them $93,000. There was nothing other than that invoice. There was no written agreement to that effect that we did owe them that money. So the committee recommended that, unanimously recommended that we have our city administrator write a letter to SmartWorks telling them that we do not owe them that money, and that there was no proof or written documentation that we owed that to them. We discussed the procurement policy. Our finance director discussed that, and just the policy and procedures for procurement. We reviewed our sales tax analysis report, and I am happy to report that our sales tax year-to-date up through February, which reflects December receipts, was up, our budgeted item was up by $526,535. That is an increase for the year-to-date of 5.79%, and we're projected to keep that pace up through the end of the year. So we should get about between almost $750,000 over the budgeted amount for revenue. So that is very good news. We also reviewed the stormwater utility fund, and we looked at that fund. We have collected, we still have a balance left in that fund to spend of $1,658,655. So we can start our, we can still resume our drainage projects up through the end of the year because we still have that money to spend. We reviewed our hotel motel occupancy tax, and this is going to be the first full year that we're going to be able to, collect that money. And we project that will be in excess of $300,000. Year-to-date, we've collected a little bit over $188,000, but the projection looks like it's going to be well over $300,000 from now until the end of June, which is our fiscal year. We went over the monthly overage reports. There was nothing outstanding there. Pretty much everything looks pretty normal. We looked at our cash flow. Our general fund right now is at a high level of almost $9 million, which is really good, but we have to sustain that and use that money up from now until pretty much the end of October, until when the new tax bills go out. But that was good news. And then the last thing that we discussed was actually the last two things we discussed was the fire hall. The fire hall is on pace to be, it looks like it's going to be totally completed between March and April timeline, which is wonderful. And it looks like if all the stars align, it looks like we're going to be under budget. So, and then we had a discussion of, we had all agreed, if you remember, probably almost 2 years ago, if we did come under budget, that those excess funds would be allocated towards our paving budget. So that'll be really good news. And that's the end of my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Chairman Cunningham, thank you. Chairman Sprouse, General Committee.
As previously stated, it looks like items A, F, and G have been before the committee and are recommended to you by the General Committee. And we will have our meeting the second Tuesday of March. Thank you.
Chairman Sprouse, thank you. Next is our Public Safety Committee from Chairman Brown. I think our Vice Chairman is Alderman Petrelli. Do we need a report on that?
No, I don't think there's any update. It's just that the fire hall is moving along beautifully, and Vice Mayor Cunningham just gave a report on the finances on that, so we're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works Chairman, Chairman Skidmore.
Thank you. Just quickly, we have a report tonight on the recycling mailer. We just had it in Public Works probably about 10 minutes ago, and I told Alon, I said, you've got 10 minutes, and that's and that was all because it took quite
Where's she at?
a while, and
Hey, Jeff, can you get us Alana, please?
she should be right in the back there. There she comes.
Thank you.
And so I specifically told her, one of the things while she's coming up here, I want to let you know that potholes are beginning to get filled now in Hendersonville. Our problem is the weather. I want to let the people of Hendersonville know this, the weather and the water, the rain, and the cold weather. So just bear with us. We're still taking pothole complaints at City Hall, 822-1016. Call us because we're in the process of when it gets warm, when the rain will eventually stop, we'll be out in the neighborhoods taking care of the potholes. So I had several complaints calling me, and we're trying to get them taken care of, and just want to let you know that. Alana, go ahead. You got about 10 minutes to roll, and that's it.
Yes, sir. Okay, if we can look at the projector screen, please. So this is what the Solid Waste and Recycling Committee submitted as the proposal for the citywide recycling mailer. So this, all right, sorry. So we wanted to make sure that the citizens' voice were heard. So in the report that you requested from the committee for April 2020, this is a section that will be included. So instead of a citywide mailer, which was similar to what the tax bill goes out, so that would be every taxpayer in the city. Instead of doing that, we talked to a couple of surveying companies, professionals, and they said you can do a sampling for our city. So for a city our size, 5,000 mailers would go out. So it'd be a random selection we get with planning and a surveying company or a program, and they would randomly pick 5,000 out of the total number. We would need 400 to come back to get an actual and suitable survey amount to collect data for our city. So that would be about, I'll skip that part, sorry. So what does the mailer consist of? It consists of a letter to the residents and a postcard for data collection. We'd also put a notice in the newspaper, so that just informing everyone in the city what's going on, and they can be a part of it if they so choose. Part of this component is also a QR code for those interested. So with this proposal, there'll be two sets. 5,000 mailed out physical mailers will go to those residents, but there will also be online survey, link survey will be provided that if any resident in the city wants to participate, that's where they can let their voice be known. So for those that aren't aware, a QR code is like a barcode. You can scan this with a mobile device, and it brings up the actual website link. So this is what you would see once you scan that, if you so choose that option. So the mailer consists of a letter, regular size letter, single side color. This is the letter. You will get copies of it to read later if you like. But it's just an introduction of what we're trying to collect with this and just information. The QR code is on the bottom right side. Contact information for the city, Facebook information for the city is on there. The postcard, this is the questionnaire side. So there's a next slide that has a larger area, but this is just a general layout of the postcard. The questionnaire is on the left, information is on the right. We're requesting that people put contact information if they would so choose. It's all optional, and there's also a QR code so they can do it by postcard or they can do it online. If the 5,000 people are going to have an identification number, see at the top middle section, it has a 4-digit number, they will have that. So that will identify the 5,000 that are mailed out versus just anyone in the city who wants to participate in the information survey. So that's how you get your data collected that way. So these are the in-large questions. There's 4 main questions, and that's the back of the postcard. So the 4 proposed questions are: do you currently recycle? Citywide recycling options, drop-off recycling options, and how to fund residential recycling. So for this question, the first one, do you currently recycle? Check all that apply. They're all check all that apply. We try to give people options so we can get a good data information set. So yes, drop-off, yes, curbside collection, and it's just all the way through. So residents can choose whatever applies to them. The second question, citywide recycling, check all that apply as well. Residential subscription service, city provide collection services, in-house or contracted, or I don't want to participate in recycling. So all options are available. There's also a drop-off, and then the one about funding. Would you support the city tax funding the residential recycling. So this is also addressed in this. So I spoke with finance about the budget of this, how much it would cost. For the city property tax mailers that go out, there's about 18,500, 20,000, that go out, and that's the general price of what it cost. They, however, don't have a return. We have a postcard with, it's printed, posted, so you just put it back in your mailbox, or you can bring it up to City Hall and put it in our box that we'll have available. So that's for the taxes, and that's for all the residents. But our proposed budget for the city sampling mailer, approximately 5,000 households, with the later, all the stuff that goes with it, approximately between the numbers of 5,000 and 8,500. 5,000 being the lowest, 85 being one of the highest. We talked to a few vendors, and that's the kind of median. They know we want a hard number, so they're getting that to us tomorrow, hopefully, but by the end of the week. So we'll have that. And the other numbers not factored into that one number are the return postage for the postcard and the newspaper notice. So we'll have all that. The end.
Nice.
Are there any questions with regards to recycling?
I do.
Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. When can we get a copy of your presentation?
Hold on, sorry, I turned you, hold on here. There we go, sorry.
When can we get a copy of your presentation?
Tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd also like to congratulate Ms. Hibbler
No
on
kidding.
her award for her Outstanding Young Professional Award. Is that the correct?
Women Impacting the Community Young Professional Award. Yes,
Very proud of
Congratulations,
Alana. And we also have a member in our Parks Department who received, and also we had a commander who was nominated. So we are so proud of those team players in our community. Thank you.
Alderman Woodcock.
Can I assume we're beyond the point of giving suggestions about the questions?
It can be brought back to the committee.
So can you bring up the questions that people would answer?
Yes, sir. You talking about the list?
No, like the actual,
Okay.
where it talked about drop-off locations.
Oh, there's 4 of them, okay.
So the first thing that I thought of was I had several people, residents and vendors, say that they would not use a drop-off location,
Okay.
but they would do curbside.
Okay.
So when I see my options, I don't really have an options that allows me to answer that, so I would pick the third option because I
Okay.
would not use a drop-off site, which would then sway your results because it would look like I'm saying I don't want to recycle when I'm
So
trying to say.
you would say I would not like to do it as a drop-off site?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. Alderman Skidmore.
Yeah,
Chairman
question.
Skidmore, excuse me.
So, Alderman Woodcock, what do you think should be placed there? Should a question of,
I think she knows kind of where I'm going with. Basically, I just want the option of I do not want to do drop-off, or I prefer not to drop off, I prefer curbside.
okay, you got
Yes, sir.
that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm not trying to speed this up, but I realize that we've got stuff we've got to do tonight, and this teaching of this thing we've got to do and realize this. So, but I do want to emphasize to the Board of Aldermen that this is a very important survey for our city because this survey, along with the request for proposals that the committee has proposed to go out with recycling, is probably going to dictate to you the effect of how you vote, because it is important. This survey is probably one of the most important surveys we've ever proposed in the city of Hendersonville in quite some time. So I do appreciate everybody's impact of their question because it's very important. So if there is a question that when you get home tonight, if you're like me, you go, oh man, I should have freaking asked that question. Get with Alana, email her or call her and tell her, what it is, because we're trying to get all this stuff quickly to the board so they will determine when we start at budget where we are on this. It could be a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So we appreciate that. We're going to be having a special call meeting next week dealing with our budget, by the way, and I'm sure that the recycling will be talked about as well. But I just want to let everybody know that if you go home tonight, thinking about something you should have asked, get with Alana and give her a ring or an email and let her know your thoughts on it.
Chairman Skidmore, I think we have one more question for Alana.
Yes.
Alderman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor. Alana, when are you projecting to send the mailers out?
The first or second week of March. because we
Okay,
need
and when are you projecting to have the results of them?
the last week of March, because we have to put it in the proposal that the board requested for April,
Okay.
1st of April. So we
Okay,
have a month.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Alderman Cunningham. Chairman Skidmore, anything else?
No, sir, that's it for the report tonight.
Can I
Thank
make one comment?
You've
sir?
got like 4 minutes left.
Okay, awesome.
You did a
Alderman
good
Petrillo-
job.
Thank you. You said 10. Alderman Petrella, you said, I said tomorrow, so if, maybe tomorrow afternoon, if everyone gets input, and then I'll mail it out to everybody, send it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Campbell, Capital Projects Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You all know about Fire Hall number 2, so I'll just scratch that off my list. Moving right along to TEMA, that's quite all right. You're quite all right. TEMA, the TEMA buyout is moving along. We had sent out our RFPs for appraisals or appraisers to appraise the properties that are in question. It's currently at the state for review. They have to review all that since it is a state project. And we all love the state reviewing everything. It just seems to slow things down. So anyways, moving on to the Walton Ferry Old Shackle Island Road realignment. That has been delayed due to the purchase of the right-of-ways still. Here again, the state is buying right-of-ways. I tried to get a hard number on how many properties they were still working on, but I understand there's 50 at play here. It could be all 50 for all I know, but here again, the state's in control. And this has only been going along now for about 15 years, and it's going on for another year. Sorry to give you that report, but that's the way that one goes. And then the Saunders Ferry Walking Trail is waiting on the Corps of Engineers for reapproval of the environmental documents. They were approved, they're only approved for so long in a time frame. And this particular issue, Saunders Ferry Walking Trail, that was started a year prior to me joining the board, so that is right at 6, going on 7 years now. And they had to get we had to resubmit paperwork to the Corps of Engineers for reapproval for the environmental impact documents. That's what we're waiting on here. So that's my report, Mayor. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that, Chairman Campbell. Alderman Woodcock, Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned at the last meeting, item F had a accidental misunderstanding. If you look at page 20, Director Free provided a very great summary of everything that did happen, so if you want a refresher, feel free to read that. Other than that, that's my report. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Interim City Administrator, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Before I continue my report, one of the things that in my report we're going to do is a little mock voting for the new system while the IT people are here, so I don't have to stay too late. But they thought this was a great idea, and I do too, that kind of go through the system. It's very simple. I think they've done a great job, and so I'm going to turn it over to IT, and you guys can take it from here and explain what you need from the board.
Sounds like we're on. Good evening, everyone. My name's Tina Martin. I'm with the IT department here at the City of Hendersonville. We just wanted to give everyone a brief overview of the new system and a little bit of what it's going to look like. During the meeting, you'll see a ticker at the bottom that sort of tracks the items that are on each agenda. You'll see the microphones light up when various people are queued for speaking and when they are waiting and requesting to speak. The other major part of the system is going to be the voting piece. The voting piece will highlight each person's individual microphone once they've actually voted. It'll just simply show it as being dark, being that they've placed a vote, not what they've actually voted. Once all the votes are in and tallied, the system will throw up a screen that shows the compilation of everyone's votes. This will also be printed out on a printout at the end of the meeting that gets attached to the minutes, and that will be posted on the website. So this way, it'll just be a little bit more crystal clear as far as the voting is concerned. Your microphones have been reconfigured this week. They will now blink at you when you're ready to vote. Of course, green being yes on the left, red being no on the right, and abstain being in the middle. The LEDs also match. And we've asked the mayor to come up with a demonstration vote question for everyone, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to the mayor.
So I smell cookies, and I'm pretty good at that. Somebody has cookies here, which is difficult because starting tomorrow I'm giving up sweets for Lent. We took a poll in my office earlier, how many people think that I'm going to be able to make it all of Lent without sweets, and I voted yes, 2 people voted no. So I'd like for you all to vote. Do you think I can make it through Lent without sweets?
Okay, before you vote, I just want to point out a couple of things. Once I hit the start button over here on this side, you will be given 15 seconds to place your vote. Once all the votes are in, the system will go ahead and display the votes. Is everyone ready?
Vote aye if you think I can make it, nay if you don't.
All right. Yep, we are ready and we are voting. The countdown is on the screen.
So when it quits blinking, we voted, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm waiting on, it looks like, Mr. Waters. Oh, there we go.
Really?
All righty, and this is everyone's vote. Sorry, Mayor.
So we have 4 people yes, 1 abstaining, 5 no, total voted 10, 3 people didn't vote.
That is correct. I believe you have 2 absent, and I don't believe it ever recorded Mr. Waters' vote. I did not see him log in. Did you? Well, going to have to work on those buttons.
What can we do, Tina, to make sure that his is working? Okay. Alderman Campbell, what are you giving up? You give us a question. Will we be out of here before 9 o'clock?
Are we going to be out of here by 9?
By what time?
9:30.
9:30. Those of you who feel like we'll be out of here by 9:30, please vote
All
aye.
righty, your buttons are active. Go for it.
No kidding. There's a lot of pressure on this one.
All
We've
right.
all voted. So
There we
total
go.
11. Total not voted is 2 because we have 2 people absent. 9 people voted yes, 2 voted no. We need to look out for those people. Thank you, Tina.
No problem, sir.
Okay. The 2 people voted no, you won't be allowed to speak tonight. So, Tina, anything else we need to know? Tina, anything else we need to know?
No, sir. If anybody has any questions on the voting system, there will be a training session, obviously, before we go live. We're going to do that as a working session with everyone, so individual training is also available. We'll be getting with everyone on the particulars, and if anybody has any questions in the meantime, please let us know.
Thank you, Tina, for all your work on this. Thank you, Mary Beth, as well, and all the IT department.
Yeah.
Dave.
Thank you, IT department did a great job. A couple of things going forward. Codes interim director, Greg's doing a good job. He's down a man, of course, with him taking over as interim, his position is vacant, so he's kind of doing both jobs. He's coming in 6 o'clock in the morning, getting his people schedules logged in, what appointments they need to make, and they're all out in the field, and he goes out in the field at 9 o'clock and works till about noon, then comes back in the office and does plans reviews and stuff, but he's doing a great job. He's down 1 man now. Gentleman had a relative out of the country that was very ill, and so he had to leave the country for a couple of weeks, but he's doing a great job. I appreciate him. Interim Chris at HR, again, moving forward with a lot of little agenda items that he has that we need to move on some of the rules and regs in a positive direction. Public Works Director was Marshall's doing a good job. ADA coordinator position has been posted, and it's open until Friday. It's been posted 2 weeks now. This is the 3rd week. So the ADA coordinator position will close on Friday afternoon, and we'll move forward with that. I've asked Marshall, Trace, and Dwayne at our next meeting to give us a kind of a detailed stormwater report on projects and things like that. I think we're ready for that. The money's coming in. Projects are being done. There's a pretty good list of projects that are being done. So I think it's time to, before we get into the budget process, that they give a report, and willing to do that in the next meeting. Fire department, police department, and HR and myself met, and we suggested that they get together, the 2 departments, 2 chiefs get together on the standard operating procedures, and make sure that we have accidents, issues, and things like that, that we know where everybody's going to be, and then we're going to take that standard operating procedure and go citywide in April with all the department heads and the key figures in each department. So if we have a tornado that comes through, each department has got certain things they need to do, and so this will be something citywide that has been needed. We did the dry run on the voting machine. We continue, if you don't mind, if you're going to email staff, that's great. Just carbon copy me so we kind of know what's going on, especially during this budget process. They've done a great job responding to you. I don't think we have anything issues on that. Census coming up pretty soon. I'm going to get Mary Beth to do some posting on Facebook, on the website about the census, and try to get some more advertising on that out there, and she'll report at the next meeting on that. And then, excuse me, Robert talked to us this morning about finance and the budget. All the departments are meeting with him through the end of this week, and then I'll meet with him next week, and then we'll start the plans and as far as meeting and have workshops and things like that, and get the budget process moving forward. Okay, last thing on the agenda for myself as a report is how we got where we are with the city administrator applications. Been some confusion, and I won't make it convoluted. I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but I want to give you the bullet points of where we are. When you hired me as interim, you asked me to move forward with the city administrator permanent job. We did that, posted it. Applications came in on the 31st of January. We got 24 people. MTAS and Peter Voss and Chris narrowed those down with just qualifications only. If they didn't meet the minimum qualifications, they took them and put them in a separate pile. Those people have already been notified that they didn't make the cut. And so 12 people have already been notified that they will not be interviewed from this point forward. Those 12 applications now are being looked at by a committee that, again, Peter, Chris, myself, and Gary Jekyll put a committee together with myself and those people. Peter's not here, of course. But we got Tim Ellis from Goodlettsville, city manager, and Jerry Herman from White House, city administrator, and then two people off the city administrator committee, Rick Fox and Rita Lee. So we think we have a very well-rounded committee. We think that very as non-political as we can get and very fair and try to get the right person for the job. So we didn't feel it was in good judgment for us to put one of the board members on there, because you would have privy to the applications before you had interview time. So when you see the top three for the first time, then the board will interview those people. Okay, we ran into a situation, and again, I'm going to be brief and as professional as I can. And Tina Lee and I and several other people had this discussion about records releases and the law about open records. Okay, we have the law about open records. That's no secret. She turned a request in. We responded in the time frame we're supposed to, and gave her the time that she could pick the records up, which is Friday, and those records will be delivered to them then. The mayor requested last week that I give him a copy of all the records, and I responded. And again, I'm trying to be as open as we can. I just don't think at this time, giving the applications to you people is a good idea, because if I give you 12 applications and you start looking through them, and then the committee gives you 3 people, and you say, well, I think Johnny up here is better than old Bobby here or Susie. And so, again, we just felt that the process that you asked me to do as interim administrator is following through and try to make it as fair, legitimate, open as possible, and keep out the politics. Again, until we get to the interview process, then it'll be your decision who you hire. So again, we're not trying to hide anything from anybody. We just think in the long haul, this is the best way to go. The reason why I say that is in the Parks Department search, when we get to the 3 candidates, they were put in the newspaper, and one of the candidates' name was put in there, and he almost lost his job over it. He could have lost his career. He was very upset. He wasn't notified that his name was going to be in the paper and where he worked, and he was very, very upset. And I just don't want that. I don't want to taint the process by putting people's names and where they work, so that if somebody from Athens, Alabama is applying for the job and he's assistant city manager and he's trying to move up the food chain as a city manager somewhere else, and his boss finds out that he applied for the job before the process is complete, I just don't think it's fair to the individual. I don't want the individuals to be penalized. I think it's our duty to keep this thing as fair as possible. And again, I don't have a dog in the fight, because when we hire that new person, that's great. I can go back to playing golf. So with that being said, I just want to kind of give you a report of where I was coming from on what we did in the committee, how we got to this point, and just kind of move forward. So I don't know if anybody wants to respond, give me a blessing, tell me you think I'm crazy or what.
Alderman Strauss.
Thank you, Mayor. I think first off, we just need to recognize that this is one of the situations that we have to deal with as a public entity, as a public organization, as government, that private organizations don't have to deal with, and private employees don't have to deal with. And it's tough. We work in an environment where every city employee knows what every coworker makes. Someone who's been here 3 years shorter than they have, someone who may feel like it's not working as hard as they are, but they know what they make. And if you can only imagine what that would be like in most corporate environments, if that was public record. We have department heads who wish that they could say, this person is going above and beyond, I wish I could give them a bonus, and they can't because they're stuck to the pay scale. And so every day we're dealing with things in government that you don't have to deal with in the private sector. But the core of why we do these is because of the public interest. And Dave, I appreciate you balancing two needs. One, to operate the organization as effectively and as efficiently for the benefit of the public, but then also at the same time with having to balance out the need for the public to know and to be accountable. And here's where it gets tough. I wish that we lived in an environment where someone could look at 25 or 30 or 50 or 7 applicants, however many we had for any job, to hold us accountable, but it didn't necessarily mean that they would publish every name in the newspaper. Because it could be bad. What if the city of Hendersonville had a record where we may have 40% of applicants for the last 10 jobs we advertised were women, but we never had a woman as a finalist? That's something we should have as accountable. Or what if someone who was considered to be influential or politically connected or with family relation, what if their name was on the list? I think that that's the case, that when the press or the public looks at the operations, they say, yeah, we need to see the list and hold the people accountable because we saw this. But I hate the idea that 25 people, some of them who may never have been in Hendersonville, have a personal, professional, family relationship to Hendersonville, have to worry about their name being in the paper and they lose their job because of it. It's a tough situation. I don't know how we balance it out, but I do ask you one thing, that in every time that there's a requirement, stick to it. Every time there's a deadline, meet it. Every time the question is, do we release information or hold information, release what needs to be held. And I appreciate you meeting those responsibilities, because it's not only, everything can be done well and with the best intentions, but if one thing is not done according to process, that's when we leave ourselves open to accusations. They may never be deserved, but that's the unfortunate thing that we have. It's tough when we're hiring. It's tough when we're having to buy property. Can you imagine negotiating having to buy a car, or negotiating having to buy your next house, and you have to have the conversation with your spouse about how much you want to pay for the house with the real estate agent from the property owner sitting right across the table from you? They knows how much you have in the pocket. That's the price right there. So that's just some of the things we have to deal with. And I just say that to say thank you for what you do and thank you for what everyone in the city does, and ask for the public's understanding that we need to be held accountable, but then at the same time, we need to recognize those dueling interests of public need to be able to conduct business the best way possible, but at the same time to conduct it in a way that it is transparent and accountable to those who elect us and who pay for the services. Thank you.
Alderman Sprouse, thank you. Alderman Hayes.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, I'm in City Hall nearly every day, and I go by and visit folks in the different departments and see them in the hall, and I can just tell you that morale is up. People seem to feel really confident about what they're doing, and I want to congratulate you on helping us get things going in that regard. Second, I want to support you in holding some of that information and sticking to the process, because it could be sensitive for some of those applicants. And then thirdly, I wanted to ask, could we move forward on the stormwater drain fee having an appeals board? I don't think we've ever established an actual appeals board, and I think that we need that for those people who have questions about their stormwater fee.
And to answer that, I met with Dwayne and Marshall, and they're working on that committee. There's some discussion about who can be on the committee and how that committee's formed and so on. But
yeah,
Marshall and I will get to that tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Hayes, thank you. Alderman Woodcock.
Thank you. First, I want to say I agree with everything you said about how difficult it is to have all this information on people that could potentially damage their careers. But I'm having a hard time feeling comfortable with it as far as what we want versus what the state law is. So I assume that you or our city attorney verified and confirmed that withholding the information for the time period that we have is not jeopardizing any state law or anything of that nature.
No, sir. When the request was turned in, we had a week to respond. We responded within that week, and then we gave them the answer. We thought HR could meet their requirements by getting all those redacted. The thing about it is we have to redact all those personal information with HR losing Peter and transfers and timesheets. And there was a window that we just couldn't say, well, we'll get them in 2 days. That wouldn't happen. So, but we followed the law to the letter. But the time frame was a lot longer than they wanted it to be, which, I apologize, but we're in the letter of the law, okay?
So, did you check with MTAS?
Yes, sir.
And they're okay with the time frame
Yes,
that
sir.
we're taking to redact 12
Yeah,
resumes?
In fact, Mr. Bradley, our legal, and myself had 2 conversations today with Gary Jekyll from MTAS to make sure we were within our rights and what we were doing was correct, and there was nothing illegal about anything we were doing. And again, I stood up here from the day you guys hired me and told you I wasn't going to do anything wrong. I was going to do everything by the book. Again, the time frame wasn't exactly what the people wanted, and I'm sorry. We've done everything that we needed to do, and I'll ask John to speak on that too, if you don't mind.
And I'm not accusing you of
Right.
anything. It just, the official email was that we didn't have time to do it. But then in the newspaper's article, it was stated that it was more of, we didn't feel it was fair to
Good.
release the information. So that's the only thing that scares me. One is a timeline issue, one is a choice. So I want to be clear that.
Right. Well, and one of the things I did, and Tina will tell you, she and I had 2 conversations on this, and very open conversations, very, very professional. And I expressed to her what I thought was best for the process of not putting any names in there. And she assured me in the article that she did last week, didn't have any names in there, and that was fine. It was a process and how the things are going. And again, I think that the disagreement was with the time frame of when when HR could get the applications, all the information retracted out of there that didn't need to go out, and then make copies and give them to the people.
And you mentioned the individual in your example did not know his information would be public, but all the current applicants were notified in writing that their information would be public
I think that's
record.
correct, isn't that, John? I think they knew.
Yes, that's right.
Honestly, I feel like this would be something that the state should look at because on one hand, it is public document. I don't think it should take a month to do all that, but I understand the issues. But at the same time, we should almost not release everyone's information, maybe just the final 3 candidates for that very reason of jeopardizing someone's employment if they do not get the job.
Right. Well, and Mr. Jekyll said that in his conversation today, that he would like to address that situation through MTAS with the state because he didn't feel in certain circumstances, like city administrator, city manager, in high-profile jobs, that they needed to be released too quickly. So, John, what?
Yes, I think the very day that the city recorder got this request in, which I think was February 6th, but that day we got a response. We checked with the controller's office, and they gave us a long list of things that we had to redact from those. They said it's a public record. There's never been any question that this was a public record. Okay? I don't want there to be any confusion about that. Mr. Lamar has known it was a public record since day one. We all know that. It was just a matter of question of the timing of it. And Ms. Franklin, I asked her today, she followed the same procedure on this that she does with all of her records requests. Often the newspaper wants to get things quicker than other people, and sometimes that can be done and sometimes not. But I don't know if she wanted 24 or 12, or if I think it was for all of them. So there's a lot of redactions to go through 24 different job applications. You have to take out addresses and phone numbers and just a lot of things that state law and, personal identifying information, social security numbers, things like that. So I think that this is in the time frame that she normally would do this. I know sometimes things are several weeks off. And I think that maybe the deadline to notify was, so we had a holiday in there too. We had President's Day last Monday. I think Tuesday was probably the deadline, which is a week ago today, and the documents are going to be available on Friday of this week. So it's not nearly as long as it seems like. It's been a month since the deadline for the candidates, but not a month since the request. And so far as I know, we've followed the laws. And Mr. Lamar was concerned.
Hold on. Go ahead, John. John, go ahead. Oh, Tina, we can't do that. Thank you. John, go ahead.
Yeah,
I can't let you speak out of turn, just like I can't let anybody else. Go ahead, John.
I have not looked at that to see what date it was. I just know that we got an email from the controller's office that I'll be happy to share with Ms. Lee if she doesn't think that's accurate, that tells the things that have to be left out, and it does have to have some redactions. And, you know, someone making a records request, the state law requires all these things to be public records, but they do not require city employees to drop everything that they're doing when the request is made and immediately deal with it and try to get it out the same day or even the next day. State law says you have 7 business days, not 7 calendar days, 7 business days. So if you've got a weekend or President's Day or any kind of holiday in there, that makes that push it out a little bit longer. And I don't know what the normal period of time is for HR to redact all these things, some 24 applications. I know that there's a lot of paperwork that would be involved with that. When you do those redactions, you have to go through, you have to make a copy of everything, as I understand it, and then you black out or mark out all the things that can't be released, and then so you can't tell what was marked out, you have to make a copy again so that, you know, from the copy you can, those things are not discoverable. So, you know, certainly it's a question of judgment. Could it have been done quicker? I mean, you know, like Mr. Lamar pointed out, this was right about the time that Mr. Voss left. I think his last day may have been the 6th. It was right along in that period of time. And you know, if I've misstated anything, it's certainly not intentional. I do know that I looked today that the email from the controller's office was on February the 6th. If Ms. Lee's request was a day or two before that, then if it were say February 4th, it would have put it before that weekend with President's Day. It made it to Friday instead of the Tuesday. That's the only difference it would have been. It couldn't have been much more than that, I wouldn't think.
Alderman Woodcock.
We've been talking about better communication. I think if that was the statement that everyone from City Hall was saying in the words, it's not fair to release it, it's not the process I want to follow, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I agree with what you're saying. It's a time issue.
I'd like to address that. And, you know, maybe it's my fault. Because what I told Mr. Lamar was, I said, I know Tina Lee, I know she's reasonable, and maybe if you'll explain to her what your concerns are, maybe she'll agree that she won't put all that sort of information in the story. But there was never any intent to not let her have the documents. And I just suggested that he have a conversation with her and explain his concerns. Not that she couldn't get them, but just to ask for her cooperation. And I think based on what he just said, she did cooperate with it and didn't do that. So. And this is, it's interesting, the state law, they've made an exception when you're hiring the head of the Board of Regents. I think that's the only one there's an exception for. You don't get to get their information. They've got an exception for that, but they don't have an exception for city administrators or city managers that anyone at the controller's office is aware of. So all this information is definitely a public record and can be released, and my understanding is that Ms. Lee will be given all these documents on Friday, which is, you know, it's not like it's 6 months. It's not as quickly as I'm sure she would have liked to have had it, but it is this week.
Daryl, anything else?
Nope.
I'm going to stop us here. We've mentioned a person's name repeatedly, and maybe we weren't able to withhold that. Tina, do you want to speak? Okay, so then I'm going to entertain a motion to suspend the rules to allow her to speak. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Without opposition, we're going to allow her to speak. Go ahead. Yeah, you need to do that.
Welcome to the world. You do good.
And you've got no obligation to answer questions, but I feel since your name was brought up multiple times that you should have the opportunity to say something.
Okay, I would just like to say that I put in a request on February 5th for the resumes of who has applied for the city administrator position. On February 11th, I had a conversation with Mr. Lamar. He expressed his concerns with releasing informations and the names of candidates, and I said, to be quite honest, I probably won't be writing about this for several weeks. I just want to follow the process. I want to make sure that there's a transparent process going on. I want to see who applies by the 31st, and I want to follow the process. In the past, in the city of Hendersonville, people have applied for positions, and then resumes have disappeared. I mean, there have been some things that have happened in the past, for better or for worse. It's just, I wanted to follow the process personally as a journalist, and see who was so I'll just leave it at that as far as and as far as reporting on it, we talked about, I was not going to report names at that time. But I said I was going to leave my request. I submitted a request. I was not going to pull back the request. I couldn't. I have editors and publishers that I report to. I feel like this is all about Tina Lee putting in a request to the city, and it's not. It's a journalist who works for an organization who wants a transparent government. It's our job. And so that was on February 11th. And after we'd already had a conversation, it was quite obvious that I had put the request in, and then on Friday, the 14th, at 4:15 p.m. on a Friday before President's Day, I get an acknowledgement on the 7th day possible allowed by law that, yes, we received your request, and it'll be available in 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's, okay, they're going to make me wait. So I looked at the city policy, and I saw that according to the city policy, the mayor's office processes requests. So I called the mayor and I said, why does it take this long? What does it take this long to put out resumes? I'm not in any rush, but I'm like, I feel like I've been stalled. He says it shouldn't. But then I called the city administrator, and he said, well, I need to see what the board is going to do. He's like, I answered to the board. We don't want to, I don't think we should release it right now, but I want to check with them. That's where we are. I mean, that's where we are. He's checking with the board. I'm not pushing, it's not like my time frame. I'm questioning because the reason that I was given that the records weren't being released was not about, I mean, I got the form that said, retrieving, redacting, whatever, but the verbal response I got was, we don't believe it's in the best interest of the city to release them at this time. And that is not an exemption under state law. That is not an answer under state law. That answer. Now, the retrieving, redacting, yes, but I was given a different answer. And that, we wrote, our editorial board wrote an editorial and put it online and said, if the board is deciding on Tuesday, then they should release the documents right away because this is under state law. That is not an exemption. The reason of it's the best interest of the city, in the best interest of the city to release not to release these documents at this time. Also today, I also talked to the comptroller's office. I talked with Lee Pope, the counsel, and the comptroller's, the Office of Open Records Counsel. I spoke with him today, and he said that under the Public Records Act, the city should release the documents as soon as they can, and he also agreed that it should not be that the reason given of that it's in the best interest of the city or that we want to cull down the candidate applications or we want to wait until a committee meets. Those are not valid reasons to not release documents.
Tina, thank you. I want to remind everybody, we're on a report right now. We don't have any motion in front of us, okay? So we really need to keep this to questions.
So I'm sorry that went so long. I apologize.
We appreciate that. Anything else you want to add? Because I'm not likely to call you back up. We're not going to ask her questions. I got you. Well, you are third on the queue. So we'll get there. Okay. So So are you finished for right now, at least?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'll answer any questions if I can. I mean.
Okay, I appreciate that. We're going to go to Alderman Robertson.
I have no questions for Ms. Lee, but
Okay.
I do have a question for Mr. Lamar.
Let's go ahead and do that then.
Okay?
Okay.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the concern about confidentiality. I think that you're speaking from the heart, but I know as a former state employee dealing with these kinds of records, we have to be governed by our head and the plain reading of the law. And I'm glad that you have said that, and Mr. Bradley, and I agree with Alderman Sprouse, that we need to comply with the letter and the spirit of the open records law. My question is, the records that we're preparing for Ms. Lee, are they the 24 or the 12?
I don't know what you requested. I didn't see it. Did you request
The
24?
the records request, is
So
it
all 24.
24?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When will the final three be selected by the committee?
Well, we have a meeting this Thursday. And
Will they be
I don't know, we haven't met yet, so I don't know. We may be to take 2 meetings, may take 3. I don't know what this, until we meet the first time, to look at the 12 applications that we have.
So I don't know the staffing requirements. I have read on the MTAS description of the Open Records Act, I think there's 8 categories. While that's not exclusive, at least 8 categories that you can redact per the 24. So my question is, and you're the only person that can answer this, has appropriate staff been delegated to respond promptly with this open records request?
Yes, it was sent, I think Ms. Franklin sent it to HR on the 7th day when she reported back to the newspaper. She sent it to HR to be redacted and compiled and copies run off and things like that.
Do you anticipate at the meeting Thursday, the top 3 candidates will be selected?
That's a great question. I can't answer that because I don't know what kind of discussion we're going to have because this is the first time we've met.
Is there any way that we can beat the Friday deadline that's been talked about and maybe try to get Ms. Lee that information earlier than Friday?
The only thing I can do, Mr. Robinson, is check with HR, see where they are with it. And Chris is not here tonight, but I could check with him first thing in the morning.
Okay. I would appreciate if we can beat that Friday date, especially before the committee meets. I just think that it would show a goodwill, a good spirit. But again, thank you. I understand your concern. I've dealt with this myself at a state agency, and I agree with Alderman Sprouse that we just need to meet the deadlines and comply with the law.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I make a point of clarification here? And I think we've got.
Hold on 1 second. Alderman Robertson, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. It's your report. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's 2 items here. One is the request from the Standard newspaper to get the information. We followed the letter of the law, okay? The second request was from the mayor to get the information. That's why I have a hard time. It's not with the newspaper. That's not the issue. The issue tonight is, do we give the mayor and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen the applications? And that's why I draw the line thinking this is not a good idea. So to respond to you, Eddie, I think we followed the law. We haven't broken anything. I think to give the applications to you people prior to the interview process will taint the process. Now, if you tell me tonight to give you the applications, Katie, bar the door, you'll have them tomorrow. I'll give everybody the applications. We're trying to follow the process fair and honestly, and I want to keep it that way. So let's keep the 2 issues separate. Thank you.
Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm testing my memory a little bit here, but if I remember correctly, the names of the applicants who applied for codes, public works, and finance were never released to us. So I'm not really referencing the records request, but I'm referencing precedent and process. So we were not given privy to any of those applicants. So, if we're looking at past history, why is this different? And with Mr. Lamar just mentioning that the mayor
requested specifically all of the applicants. That makes it a little bit more puzzling to me. If you recall, and I think the legislation might need to be retracted now, but after there was so much confusion about some of the hiring with the director's positions and deals that were made that we were not privy to and this and that and the other, there was legislation that we all passed last year regarding a process for hiring directors, which was that we were at least given privy to the folks who were narrowed down. So I will have to agree with City Administrator Lamar that it really does not make sense to have a vat of applicants that are in the process of being culled to determine what is the best fit for our city. But I just wanted to make that point that we have had a precedent of not releasing that information in the past. And then, near as I can tell, that the time that information was released, like you said, it was detrimental to one of the applicants. So it's kind of a delicate situation. I get that, but we can't have it both ways. Thank you.
Ms. Petrelli, you make a great point. We have a plans review position in the codes that's open. We have a ADA position that's open. There's been no opens records request for that. I mean, there's been no opens records request for that. So I'm having a hard time with that too, in that we asked for one, but not 8 other ones.
Let me give it an explanation here real quick.
Go ahead.
The level that we're talking about for those positions, as well as the director's position, is lower than city administrator position. And there's also something that's very important to me. It's my responsibility to fulfill records requests. If I don't have control of those records or can make sure those records go out, I am not fulfilling my responsibility. I cannot tell you the number of times that I have made sure that I have fulfilled that responsibility by walking down the hall or making sure that I can put my hands on those records. And sometimes staff has disagreed with me about those, but it is my responsibility through ordinance that I provide those records. When somebody submits a records request, I initial those. It has my initials on those. And I make sure that my staff fulfills those record requests. It's not just that I want them for my own personal privilege. It's because it's my responsibility to do that. If you submit a records request, I will make sure that you get those records. It is my responsibility to do that. I can't pass it on to somebody else, and I can't allow somebody else to tell me that it can't be provided if legally it can be provided. I have that responsibility in this case. Alderman Edwards.
Okay, I just want to say, Mr. Lamar, I appreciate all you do. I know this is a difficult situation you've been thrust in. I know you volunteered for it, but I know this is very difficult. And I know for some reason you did. But anyway, I agree with and I appreciate your approach here, and I fully trust your responses to any open records requests. And I think you've made your decision. I don't think there's any decision the board here has to make. You've made the decision on the open records request, which I appreciate. So, I think this discussion could spiral out of control and we could be here late. So I guess if everybody wants to take that into consideration, there's no motion on the table. There's no decision for us to make. Right. The city administrator has made his report. He's made his decision, and let's go along with it. So, and I could see if anybody wants to debate open records with Tina Lee or anybody, that could probably be done elsewhere. I don't think it should be done here. Thank you.
Alderman Edwards, thank you. Alderman Sprouse.
Thank you. Dave, our conversations have been regarding the process, that there's a process in place for department heads. This is not exactly a department head type position, so it's not a fit-for-fit, step-by-step type thing. But my request has been, and your response to me has been, that your goal is to follow that process as closely as possible as it applies. So I thank you for that. I will tell you that I think maybe only one time in all the times, and not just with this mayor, but 2 prior mayors, that I've known more than the 3 finalists for any department head position. I think that one time was when we were having some issues with a yet-to-be permanently filled public works position, because the process has been taking so long, just wanting to look at the product. So I think that it's important that we have this conversation, because there have been some very public accusations made. There have been some very public assumptions made, not necessarily in this room, but we're hearing, well, so-and-so's the fit for the job, and so-and-so's applied for this job, and I don't know, but I would be really surprised if some of those people who have left this building would want to come back as city administrator and would even apply for that position. I'm surprised Dave took the interim position. But we just have to think about the applications and the process. I also think we have to remember the city recorder is on a regular basis processing many public records requests. The last couple of years, there has not been a time that I have not walked into her office and she does not have at least one request on her desk that she's processing, and a few that she's already processed that are sitting over at the side table in her office that she's waiting for someone to come look at or review. So there is a queue, and we have to wait our turns. I've submitted requests to the state, and I'm waiting for a response. I think something that we need to bring up, and I'm going to ask Mr. Campbell, we at one time had a policy he had proposed, or amendments he had proposed to our records policy clarifying who is responsible and how people are responsible. That the city recorder, in her position of performing the request and having authority to the state, reporting directly to the board as the city recorder, that she has final authority working with state and working with city attorney, appropriate staff to advise her on what is a public record and what the policy is. Because over the past few years, there have been some questions like this and questions internal where she had prepared documents that were ready to go out and just not everything seemed like it was going out. So I think it would be appropriate if Mr. Campbell would like to bring that back to General Committee so we could refresh that. I'd love to have that conversation. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Finally, with Mrs. Lee, I want everything to be as clean and clear as possible, that we do everything we can. People are not perfect. Therefore, organizations of people are not perfect. I hope that folks are judged by their intentions and they're more likely to make a mistake out of just error, out of malice. But we are supposed to be accountable. One thing that you could do that would really help me, and we don't have to have the conversation here, but if we could have the conversation at some other time, it can be one-on-one, we can talk in committee, however you want to do this, is I heard earlier in your comments that there were times when applications would disappear or resumes would disappear. If that's happened and you can help me with that, I don't care if it was a year ago or 10 years ago, help me with that and I'll see what I can do to help with that. And if there's a failure in the process and something we can fix.
Address me, please. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I get what you're trying to say.
We're going to ask her a question, so that's my question. If she can help me with that, I will be very willing to help her with trying to find if there's a hole that needs to be plugged, let's plug it. Okay. Because I hate having these type of conversations where the intentions and the integrity of the process are being called into question. Because if we're making mistakes, we need to fix them. Thank you.
Tina, do you want to respond?
Can we?
We have each other's phone numbers.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Alderman Woodcock. Thank you, Alderman Strauss.
Thank you. First, I apologize to everyone who voted for us to be done by 9.
9:30, and I'm still in there.
B, I want to be very clear, I don't care who controls the records, however that ends up, I really don't care. I never wanted the resumes. I'm still not going to request the resumes. I've never requested the resumes of other applicants other than the one that was presented to us by the mayor. Just like I don't care that a janitor at Disney quit, but I do care that the CEO quit. That's why some positions get more attention than others. I am concerned, and I want our city attorney to verify that when I was elected office, did I lose my right to public records?
No, of course not.
So if this board takes action to say that I'm not allowed to see the resumes, that's an illegal act. So no one can do that.
I don't think this board's going to take that action,
Well,
but they
I know,
couldn't.
but I don't want anyone to misunderstand that. If anyone in this building is not comfortable with us seeing the resumes, that does not stop us from getting the resumes.
Yes, of course,
if we
any
file
member
the
of this
proper
board can
paperwork.
make an open records request. And I think that was part of the legislation Mr. Campbell was working on previously to clarify what members of this board needed to do, if they needed to fill out the same policy or form that
Right,
everybody else
that.
fills out for the city recorder.
Yeah.
Ms. Franklin, as part of her responsibilities for meeting those records.
So there's no two issues of Tina getting the records or the alderman getting the records because neither
all
one
public.
can be stopped, right?
Right, it's,
Okay.
we've got a
All right.
process we go through, and Ms. Lee has followed that process, and she's about to get her records.
And I
hope.
agree with the process, and I will not be making that request, but I just wanted to be very clear that nothing can stop any one of us from making a public records request, no matter what.
That's correct. Sure, absolutely.
Alderman Woodcock, thank you. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, to point that out, part of that legislation was to clean up the open records requests that were being made by anybody. I think if anyone in this room walked up and said, hey, I'd like an open records request, fine. Here's your form, fill it out, and sign right here. Same thing for us. If we want to go looking at a bunch of files, and when I first became an alderman, I walked in Dana Hires' office one day, and she had like 30 banker boxes behind her desk. I said, boy, you're busy. She said, oh, that's an open records request right there. Somebody has called for about 2 months ago, and is still waiting on them to show up to look at them. But I mean, it was 30 boxes stacked up in her office right there behind her desk, specifically wanting to look at some financial information. It was there, but they never showed up. They filled out the request to have our employees go through the work of redacting and doing all the things they have to do to all that to get it prepared. So, but the legislation I had brought forward, and I'm going to bring it back again, would be coming from the state comptroller's office related to open records requests and things of this nature. And hopefully we can clear some of this up. Thank you.
Alderman Campbell, thank you. Back to your report, if you're finished.
Yes, sir. If you don't have anything else for me, we'll just leave it like it is.
Well, we're shooting for 9:30.
I'm good.
Thank you, I appreciate that, Dave. Next on the agenda, we have ordinance and resolutions, and we've grouped items A, B, C, D, and E. That's the second reading of ordinance 2019-53. This is an ordinance amending the Hendersonville Municipal Code, Title 4, Chapter 3, the Comprehensive Classification and Compensation Plan. Item B, which is second reading of ordinance 2020-1. This is an ordinance accepting and appropriating donations in the amount of $1,250 from anonymous donors from Mary's Magical Place Maintenance Fund. Item C, second reading of ordinance 2020-2. This is an ordinance amending ordinance 2019-22, appropriating up to $80,686 for fire department salaries overtime for staffing of the UTV and the parks. Item D, this is second reading of ordinance 2020-3, an ordinance amending budget ordinance 2019-22 by appropriating $16,000 to the Parks Department line item assets $7,000 and up. Item E, this is second reading of ordinance 2020-5, an ordinance amending budget ordinance 2019-22 by appropriating $33,240 to the Public Works Department line item assets $7,000 and up. Alderman Skidmore. A motion from Alderman Skidmore and a second from Alderman Edwards. All those in favor of approving second reading of ordinance 2019-53, second reading of ordinance 2020-1, second reading of ordinance 2020-2, second reading of ordinance 2020-3, and second reading of ordinance 2020-5, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Oh, it's going to be, let's do it electronic. All those in favor, Tina, are you ready for us? Okay. This is great TV right here. By the way, we do not have it set up yet where you can change your vote. So once you press it in, that's your vote. This is good practice. That passes 11-0. As we do this, I will always pause after we vote, just so our camera can turn to that for a few seconds. So thank you, Jeff. Next, we have Resolution 2020-9. This is a resolution to approve the final development plan for the Jack Alexander property, Lot 2, Pet Suites, and to add animal care and veterinarian service to the list of permitted uses for the property. Alderman Woodcock. We have a motion and a second. Who's our second? Alderman Waters? Alderman Woodcock.
No comment.
Okay. Alderman Waters.
No comment. Do I push a button?
You're on.
You're on.
I'm on.
I look good up there.
Anything else you want to share with us?
Are we going to wait and let them make a presentation before?
If we desire to?
That's up to you and them. I have a lot of questions for them.
Okay.
So can we let them make the presentation?
Why don't we go ahead and do that? I'm going to ask Keith Free to come up first. Let's go ahead and suspend the rules if we have no objections. We don't need to suspend the rules for Keith, but we certainly do to allow some folks from Pet Suites. But at the same time, I feel like we should suspend the rules for the gentleman who spoke earlier as well.
Thank you. So moved.
Okay, without objection?
Let's see if we can get this switched
Okay.
over to the
Okay, Keith, you're on.
PowerPoint. Let me see where that's at. I may have to come a little closer to see.
His eyes aren't as good as they used to.
There we go.
All right, is it okay to? You're good. The issue that we have tonight is Pet Suites. It's located here on Main Street. It's got two things going on. This is a project that had a preliminary development plan approved at one point in time, but never had a final development plan. So it has that, plus Pet Suites is wanting to add a new use that would allow the use of a kennel at this location. So those are the two items that went through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission recommended approval, and it's before you tonight to make that determination. If you'll remember, this was the site that was originally the zone was changed and a new preliminary development plan was done for a storage facility, and that storage facility ended up not working out, and so this is a new request. And I can answer any questions, and I think the developer and the developer's representatives are here, and they can answer any question as well.
Alderman Waters?
Keith, we need to start off. I'm really concerned about this because I know that lady and I know where she lives. Wave your hand, hon. Wave your hand. Miss Alexander, wave your hand. That lady is a great, her and her husband, I've known them for a long time, and he passed away, I don't know, several months ago, but this is to me personally. But aside that, and looking at the slides and the blueprints we have here, Keith, how far is Miss Alexander's house from that property of the applicant?
I think it's 10 feet. Yeah. I think it's approximately 10 feet, and it's located right here where I've got the cursor. That existing house is right there. Is the location, and then here's the drive area along the side of the building. So it's right in there. It kind of does an indentation. This lot, and this Pet Suites lot now, and then the home right here that Alderman Waters is referring to. This is all part of the original Jack Alexander plan development.
Getting back to the architect here, how many dog pens are we going to have and where are they going to be located?
Marty, introduce yourself, please, and anybody else that comes up representing Pet Suites.
Absolutely. Good evening, folks. I'm Marty Cook. I represent Hogan Real Estate and Pet Suites of America that's proposing this project. So a couple of things. We have worked over the last few weeks, and I've spent a great deal of time with my neighbors here on Burris Avenue and trying to get them more comfortable with this project, and the developer has taken steps to make this, we hope, much more attractive than the self-storage facility that was previously approved, in that it was 2 stories. It expanded on all sides to the edges of the property. There was very little buffering. There would have been traffic at all hours of the night through that facility. And so there has been an intentional effort to move this, the building envelope towards Gallatin Road, leaving both a space buffer as well as leaving significant vegetation on the back property line. And the landscape plan will call for the adding of additional vegetation in that area to further buffer this from any of the surrounding neighbors. With regards to Miss Alexander's property line, there is shown, and not what in the packet you all have, but on the landscaping plan that would eventually be part of the overall plan, there is an evergreen buffer along that property line, as well as other trees shown on this plan to screen anything that you would see from her property. With regard to the operation of the facility, there are no dogs are pinned up outside and kept there at any time.
Excuse me, never?
Never.
Outside?
Outside, there is a play area where dogs are taken out from time to time under supervision for training, for potty breaks, for supervised playtime. They are not kept in pens outside for extended periods of time.
So where am I getting this 16 pins at the back?
There are pins along the back where if...
Do you have a highlighter there that you can point that to me, Keith?
Yes, there are pins inside the building, so most times the dogs are inside the building. I've talked to the residents about efforts that are made to add additional insulation to this building so that sound does not escape. There are pins along the back where if a dog needs to go, when they go out for a potty break.
Come down to the back. Is that where they're going to be?
There are a few along the backside where if a dog needs to take a potty break and be by itself while it does its business.
Now you're saying, excuse me, you're saying a few, and I'm hearing 16 pins.
That's correct.
Now, am I wrong or right?
No, I believe that's correct. They are along that backside. But what
16?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's say 16, not a few.
Okay.
Okay?
Outside.
Outside, right? Are they outside? Are these pens outside?
Let's hear from Pet Suites.
Are they enclosed?
Hold on just a second, Mr. Waters. So, yeah, somebody come up and help us answer this question.
Yeah, I'm getting confused here.
I think it's all of us. So, give us your name first, please.
Mike Leonard, Hogan Real Estate, Louisville, Kentucky. We're the developers for Pet Suites and have this property under contract and would like to develop a Pet Suite facility here. I think 2 things going on in the facility. One of them is inside the building, which is where the dogs are kept overnight. They're traditionally people will refer to them as pens. That's where they are. In the external area, along, was there a mouse or? Sorry, there you go. Yeah, thanks. So the second thing that's going on is in the outdoor area. There's a play area which comprises of this area here and this area here for daytime. Exercising of the dogs, doing some training, as was mentioned, for some of them to do their business that has to happen somewhere. And that happens in a collection of pens, as you referred to them, that are along this back here or can be along the side as well. And they are used for, got to go for a potty. They're not out there all day. Stuck in a cage. So that is what goes on outside. There's actually, believe it or not, a couple little pools out here for the dogs to sort of, cool off in the summer heat. And there's also a couple of canopies that are out here. So this is meant to be an entertainment area for the dogs during the daytime. They are always supervised, never out there by themselves. So that's sort of what happens outside, which is a little separate from internal.
Okay, let me interrupt you. Don't leave me. Stay right there. On the right, you got you got 3 dark places. Is that where you're going to put them outside?
So this area here, I'm going to outline this area here.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many is that on the right?
So this represents, it's called canine grass. So it's basically artificial grass for the dogs to do their business. This is a covered canopy. And you'll see that in some of the renderings later on in the presentation. Again, this is just a cover from the heat. And then it's just a duplicate of this sort of canine grass area. All of this will come through when we do our site plan in more detail. And I apologize for not having that detail today, but I think we were focusing on the development plan.
Okay. On the side there, how many dogs at one time will you have in those pens?
Well, the pens will typically, again, the dogs will go in and out of the pens, but there's also dogs that are being entertained out here.
No, sir, I didn't ask you that. How many dogs will you have in a pen at one time?
In a pen, there could be 1 or 2. I don't exactly know that answer, but the pen's not that big, so it's not being used to hold the dog. It's being used for the dog to go to the bathroom.
Let's get back to the rear, where I've been told it's 16 pens.
Yep.
That's all open, right? It's just not closed in.
It is inside a 7-foot fence, I believe. So this is all fenced in. All fenced in.
We got one up the road here, JoJo's. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was up there. It's all open. It's just a fence is around it.
There's a fence around here.
Excuse me. How many dogs will be out there at one time?
In the outdoor play area, there can be, I don't know, there could be 25 dogs out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
3 to 25. Okay.
And now, all supervised.
A dog's going to bark where you're going to supervise them, not, sir. I'm not concerned about supervising the dog. I've got one.
Well, the
and
typically
he barks
dogs
all the time. Excuse me. Let me continue because I want to be out here by 9:15. I forgot my train of thought. Oh, I know what it is. How far is it from the side of your building over to Miss Alexander's property line?
Can we move that slide over so we can?
Oh, I asked the wrong one, huh?
Yeah,
I'm
need
sorry.
another introduction.
He's the numbers guy.
Lee Horn, Reagan Smith Associates, we're the civil engineer. From the face of the Pet Suites building to Miss Alexander's home is about 60 feet.
60 feet from the side of this noisy
From the
pen
side of
at
the
the
building,
back
yes.
over to her house is 60 feet.
That's correct.
Is that what you're telling me? Okay. But the outside, it's not enclosed. I want to be sure I understand that.
Excuse me, the enclosed portion is 60 feet. The portion at the rear is further. I don't have that exact number, probably 65 to 70.
So you guys have confused me right here. Alderman Waters, can I interrupt you real quick?
Pardon me?
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Real quick, make it
Okay.
quick.
So Miss Alexander's property is on the left side as we're looking at
Yeah,
it.
pull it over to
The
the,
pens are on the right side
pull it over. The pins are to the rear.
and the rear.
Yes, sir.
So her house is her house is 60 feet from the wall on the
Right.
left.
That's her house on the left, sir.
Right. This distance right here from the
It's
Pet
at
Suites
60
building,
feet.
that is
Thank you.
60 feet.
Thank you.
60
Okay,
feet.
Alderman Waters, back to you.
Yes.
About the dumpster. How close to the dumpster?
That's a dumpster access and fire access as well.
Alderman Waters, go ahead.
Can I go?
Yes.
How close are we to a dumpster of any nature or where are you going to have them?
So the dumpster is right there where the mouse is pointing. This corner of the house is approximately 35 feet from the dumpster.
35 feet to a dumpster.
Yes, sir.
And that lady goes out on her patio. What'd you do with them? Here they are. She goes out on this patio in the summertime. That's the only relaxation she gets on a patio at the back of her house. And you're going to be 60 feet from the dogs barking and the odor. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Alderman Waters, you want us to come back to you?
I'm not through.
Okay.
I'm just reading my notes. It's not 9:15 yet.
As Mr. Cook mentioned earlier, there will be a evergreen screen between her house.
That
and
don't
the dumpster.
stop noise. Come on.
Let's not get into debate. Ask him questions you've got. Some,
Thank
okay?
you. Let me ask the board something, okay? If I had my parents was living at this age, and bless your heart, honey, you're so beautiful. But how can anybody on this board, and think about this, put your parent, she lives there, and you're going to let them build something like this next to your parents' home that she's had for how many years?
Almost 50.
50 years, her and her husband. And now you're going to build this thing 60 feet from her patio when she goes out and sits to enjoy life. God forbid you. Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield back.
Thank you, Alderman Waters. Alderman Strauss.
Thank you. Some of y'all may remember Bill Portman, Alderman in Ward 4, and after redistricting, the line between Ward 4 and Ward 2 was pretty close behind his back porch. And he called me one day and wanted to talk about a dog that was barking. And I asked him the address. He was no longer an alderman. I asked him the address. I wrote it down. And then I said, well, Bill, we got a particular issue here. He said, what's that? I said, that dog lives on the other side of the boundary. In this matter, I represent him. And in this situation, I represent the residents of this area. And so Mr. Waters asked a very good question. I always do ask that question. Would I want to live there? We're family members who are in that situation, that stage of life. However I can find, or a friend or someone, how would I feel and how would I discuss this with them? And I think that it's important for us to recognize a few things as part of this discussion. One is, when this property came to us a few years ago and we zoned it for storage, we went through, I can't remember, Keith, were you in the position, or was it Mr. Rogers? You went through the list of some of the permitted uses that are on the property. We're not really doing a zoning that is questioning whether or not something is commercial or not commercial. We're talking about the finer points of what permitted uses are within that. And I think we talked about crematoriums, and we talked about banks, and we talked about fast food restaurants, and we removed a lot of those uses when we added storage. And this use was originally on that list. So if we had never swapped it to where we could do storage, that's the zoning. That use would have, when we changed the use, I'm sorry. When we changed the use, but we removed this use from the list a few years ago. Is that, no?
Keith, can you come up here?
Yeah,
Please.
yeah,
'Cause
I'll make sure I'm getting
we all wanna hear this
this.
answer.
No, I want to make sure I don't want to say anything that's not right.
Yeah, the developers at that time, and I don't think we even really requested them to do it, but they gave up personal services, which include all of those different things. And then there's a specific category which they're asking for, which is veterinarian and animal clinic or animal care, which has kennel under it. But this is under the old 1985 zoning ordinance, and it has all those different kinds of uses that are totally different than what we have today. So we have to go by what those old ones were. And under personal care, there was a lot of different determinations were made about animal care, related to animal care, where it could have possibly been interpreted to be under that. There were several things that weren't specifically spelled out that were allowed under that.
Was that 85 zoning put on there? Was it when the property was subdivided?
Yeah, whenever the Jack and Alexander property was created as a preliminary development plan, it's those uses that were in time. So I just wanted to clarify, it was possible that could have been interpreted as that, but the specific use, which I feel is the proper use, if you're going to do a kennel, is the one that they're asking for.
Okay.
So it's possible under that
So
previous
it's taking
use.
something that's kind of gray and just making sure
that's
it's
correct.
absolutely clarified.
Yes.
Okay.
And I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for
Okay.
bringing that clarification. And if you'll look at the property line, the western property line, that's the one between Pet Suites and the home, you'll notice that there's even an indentation so that the house could have the appropriate setback. But one of the things that was mentioned is the Alexanders owned this property and sold it for development. And so it's not as if something is being imposed upon them. It was a choice that was made, so we know that we're going to have some sort of commercial development there. I would think that the family would have originally understood that, or they wouldn't have divided the residential property and sold this frontage on Gallatin Road. So part of me would say, if I did have a family member who said that they did this, I would say, but you sold the land. And now that it's going to be used, there's land in our family that was in our family for a long time that was sold by earlier generations that has been developed, and I wish it hadn't been. But that was a decision that was made by an earlier generation. I will say I do have some considerable concern because the dumpster is about as close as it could be to the back porch of this house. Now, I'm going to say that the folks, when they came to us in general, they pointed out that there's more screenage, there's more screening, there's more trees, there's more buffer on this property than what was previously approved for the storage facility. That the building itself is smaller, further away from existing residents, and could be considered an even lower impact use. So I think that that's a good thing. I think that when you consider what could go there right now, this is a great thing. But I do have some concern about that drive and that dumpster. You're still going to have to worry about, I feel pretty good about smell, because if you're going to have commercial service picking that up, you've talked about what the process is going to be with handling animal waste. But you're still going to have some issues with dealing with the noise and when it's going to be loaded and unloaded and things like that. I really would like to see a better resolution with the location of the dumpster. I don't think that we can do that tonight, because it also starts to involve further back proposed detention pond, the easement there that's for the detention pond. And if you have a house that's so close to the property line that the property line had to be moved when the property was subdivided, and again, that was by choice many years ago by the Alexanders themselves, I think in the interest of being the best possible neighbor that we look at how we can make some adjustments there, even if it's additional fencing, if it's additional screening, if it's relocation closer to the road, further back to the property line, if we can find that balance. And I don't think that we can do that, because it's going to be involving working with our planning department and engineering and what you have to do to make sure that you're not messing up something with dealing with drainage or anything like that. Is that something, and this is a question I may have for either Keith or the city attorney, is that something that is better handled by deferring this so you can go back and work this out on paper? I do have an amendment I want to offer, though, right now, because this is something that came up in general committee. Or is this something that we can say based upon staff review and comments? I want to make sure that this thing's firmed up.
Right.
But
it's possible. It just depends on what the developers would agree with.
Okay.
We're in this, remember, we're in a planned development, so, they're asking for something that's a little bit different, so, we can do something creative, which, some of that drainage detention is back there. It may be possible to push that dumpster further back. I don't know if there's another place on the site where it could go. You might be able to push it back, but the developer and their representative would have to address whether they're willing to do that as well. But one thing, and I think I'm familiar with the amendment that you discussed in general committee. But one other thing I might, now that we've talked about some of these outdoor cages, if somebody might consider, if you're doing an amendment, is to do something to limit the outdoor activity, not just maybe times of the outdoor activity of when it could be out there, but to clearly define that outdoor storage of animals other than just temporary wouldn't be allowed. So, because what I wouldn't want is years from now, then this changes hands,
right,
and it's got an approved kennel use, and then somebody just expands the fence and then does a bunch of outdoor kennels.
And
We
that was
wouldn't
one
want
of the
that.
things that we wanted to talk
Just
about.
indoor kennel,
While
not
y'all kind of
outdoor.
figure out how the timing to handle this next part, I'm going to go ahead and offer the amendment that came out of General Committee. We had discussion in General Committee about, we just can't accept this company's practices as being what would happen on this property, because it could change hands in 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. Company could change hands, it could shut down, somebody new could come in, and they could have a completely different practice. And there was some concern. Most of the deal that I think most of the concern it has to deal with animals and noise and things like that is handled by our noise ordinance. It's already things there on the books that you can deal with. But one of the concerns we had was about the length of time. And one was, and the amendment I'm getting ready to make, is that we restrict animals from being outdoor on the property after 8:30 in the evening. So after 8:30, no animals outside, with the exception of course, the owners bringing them in and bringing them out. If they were, you're transporting them to your car, you're dropping them off, you're picking them up. But that the operators, and however we phrase that, that's the amendment that I would like to offer.
Do you have a time in the morning that they should not be taken out?
What would y'all consider to be appropriate?
I have a question just about how you operate your
Hold, oh, hold on one second. We
normal hours are.
just give me just a second. We have sort of a motion on the floor,
Yeah.
but I want him to
I wanna
finish the
make you-
motion, and I'll come
Do
back
you
to
want to do a start time?
The facility opens at 6:30, so what,
6:30. And when does it close?
8?
Okay. Would 8 be appropriate? 8 in the morning? 8:30? 8:30 to 8:30?
When they first open in the morning, obviously the dogs have been in there all night, so their routine outside starts a little bit earlier. So if it's possible, we'd rather to have that earlier, if, can it be 6:30 or 7 a.m.?
7?
We could probably live with 7.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we take a dog out at our house
No.
around 7.
So that's just part of the process. And as it relates to the to the later hours, we understand that, so, and that's the operations are such that they're not outside in any case with this operator, and we understand you trying to protect the future, so.
Right.
Alderman Sprouse, is your motion that dogs would not be allowed outside between 8:30 p.m. and 7 o'clock a.m.?
Yes, with the exception, of course, being transport to and from the facility.
You won't have any being transported to and from the facility during that time?
Meaning when the owners are dropping them off and
They're not likely,
Okay, we'll put it in there.
so.
so.
Okay, Keith, how do we add that as a note? Yeah, I'm sorry, too.
Yeah, that could just be an amendment, and it would just be amendment to the final development plan.
Okay.
So it'd just be an amendment. We'd make sure to get that a note on the final development plan if that amendment passes, and then it all passes.
So we have
later.
amendment to the main motion to add a note, which is also an amendment to the final development plan. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second.
A motion and a second. We need to back up. I've got several people in the queue here, but we need to discuss just this one item. And here's who I have. I've got Alderman Cunningham, this item or the main motion?
Main motion.
Okay. Alderman Edwards?
Main motion.
Okay. Alderman Waters, this item or the main motion? This item, okay. But you still don't get to speak quite yet. Alderman Campbell, he hasn't gotten to speak at all. Alderman Campbell?
Main motion.
Main motion, okay. Alderman Petrelli, this item?
Possibly. Can you restate the amendment?
I'm going to let Alderman Sprouse do that.
Sure, we're going to restrict animals being outside on the property from 8:30 in the evening to 7 o'clock in the morning,
With the exception
with
of?
the exception, of course, of being transport within and out the facility.
Alderman Petrelli, do you wish to speak on this amendment?
No, main motion.
Okay, so we have no, Alderman Waters? Thank you. Okay, thank you. There you go.
You said 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.?
8:30.
Is that what I heard?
8:30 p.m. to 7 a.m. That's
all day?
No, nighttime. From
I'm
night.
sorry.
It's 7:30 at night.
I can hear.
I'm sorry, 8:30 at night to 7 o'clock the next morning are when animals are restricted from being outside.
When are they going to be outside?
They'll be outside during the day
All day?
when staff is there.
That's my point.
And we can address that point when we get there, but what we were talking about was the concern, there were multiple concerns, But the first concern is what would happen.
He's got the floor here.
I'm
Is
sorry.
that-
Let me finish with your amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
That won't hold water. Those people, that's all day. You're just taking away the night, right? That's all you're doing. She's in the bed.
I'll be
Go
happy
ahead,
to-
let him answer that.
I mean,
Mr. Waters, that's not,
I'm talking.
I just got recognized, I'm
I've got
sorry.
the floor.
You're
I've
asking
got
him
the
questions,
floor.
okay. Okay, Alderman Waters, go ahead.
I've got the floor. I thought I had it. Oh, yeah, you mentioned it was a commercial when it was sold. Yes, it was commercial when it was sold, but it wasn't sold commercial for a dog environment. I went up on Laverne this today, JoJo's. That's a beautiful place. That's commercial, but man, he's got more commercial property around him than you can't hear nothing but the trucks going up and down through there. That's a whole different ball game, Mr. Alderman.
Alderman Waters, address me.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you.
I'm
Mr.
sorry. I was
Mayor.
looking at the wrong one.
Okay. We look
Mr.
alike.
Mayor.
Yeah,
You said nothing about the dumpster. Here, that dumpster's gonna be there, right at her back door. You didn't mention that. All you mentioned was the time. No, it won't work.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Waters, thank you. Alderman Sprouse.
There are multiple concerns, Mr. Waters. One of the things that was addressed in committee was concerns about animals being out late, either accompanied, unaccompanied, for 5 minutes, for an hour, and the response was, there's no reason for them to be out. We're very happy with that type of amendment. That addresses one concern. It doesn't mean it addresses all concerns. So I think that that's something that's appropriate to say, that we're not going to have animals stored out all night or left out for extended periods. So let's address that concern. The failure, the fact that does not address all of your concerns doesn't mean that this is a valid solution to one valid concern.
Address me.
And very much, I will say, very much, I have raised questions about the dumpster and said that I would offer this amendment while they took a few moments to decide the best way for us to address the dumpster. And I'll get to that, but I think we should take this a bite at a time, and I have offered an amendment, and I yield back to the mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Okay. Tina, are you ready for us? Okay. We've got a motion on the floor, and that is to restrict the time that animals will be taken outside by staff. They will not be taken out between 8:30 p.m. and 7 a.m. Obviously, that allows them from 7 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. during the daytime to be taken out. This restriction does not apply to individuals bringing their dogs in and taking their dogs out. Any questions on that? Alderman Woodcock.
If it does happen, what's the penalty?
Keith.
Yeah, if something happened and somebody was in violation of an approved plan development, then we'd send them a letter, and if they weren't responsive to change whatever that behavior or correct it, then we would take them to court.
Could they be shut down eventually?
It's possible.
Okay.
It's possible the city could take action. More than likely, taking them to court, and it wouldn't just be once. It'd be probably taking them to court once, and if they just paid the fine and went on, then it would be daily. And so we would just keep hitting it daily, and that's the way we leverage to make them conform.
Okay. Alderman Waters.
Speaking of noise, Chief, what is the noise ordinance for dogs?
Chief Miller, we need you to come up here.
I mean, we have a noise ordinance. If they bark during the day or at night, it doesn't make it a difference.
We basically have a sound meter that any kind of noise. It's no particular about a dog barking or anything of that nature, but I can't remember the exact decimal levels. There's people that deal with that every day, and so if we get a noise complaint, whether it be loud music or something of that nature, we go out and put the noise meter on it, and if it exceeds the limit, then we can cite at that point.
How you put a noise level on a dog?
You
She
listen.
calls you, Chief, that there's a bunch of dogs out there barking. You gonna say, what's the
Yeah.
level?
It's probably not gonna exceed the noise, the decibel level, that's used. It's more in tune with, loud music or things of that nature. They would have to all be barking at one time, kinda like 101 Dalmatians, or something like that.
That's
And
possible. That is possible.
What it would do
It's not
is
funny, but it is possible.
if the din or the uproar was to such an extent that it exceeded the decibel level, which is very unlikely that it would do that for dogs barking. So that's really not going to satisfy any kind of restrictions on dogs barking, probably.
If I could
Thank you, Chief.
respond.
Okay. Alderman Waters, anything else? Alderman Strauss on the amendment?
Yeah, just
Go ahead.
really, just something was said with Chief Miller. When we were dealing with the noise ordinance the last time, part of this was put in place dealing with dogs because of discussion of a clinic over on Volunteer Drive. And that was used as an example of, because we were not dealing just with space and distance, but having to deal with an actual number of what the sound had to be, how loud the sound had to be from a certain distance from the property line. So it's covered in there. I can't tell you what the details are.
Alderman Cunningham, Alderman Edwards, Alderman Campbell, Alderman Petrelli, do you wish to speak on the amendment?
No.
No. Okay. The amendment again is to restrict the outdoor use for the dogs between 8:30 PM and 7:30 AM with the exception of dogs being brought in and out of the facility. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye on your button here in just a minute. 8:30 PM to 7 AM. So, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye by pressing your button. Those opposed, please hit nay on your button. Just on the amendment.
Mayor, I've got
We are going to scratch that vote, even though it's all right there in front of us now.
We normally don't deal with or I don't deal with the dogs. I more adept at chasing thugs down, but basically, ordinance, or code 10-215 says, no person shall own, keep, or harbor any dog which by loud, frequent barking, whining, or howling annoys or disturbs the peace of any neighborhood. So it really doesn't have a decibel level or any of that nature. It's just if we determine that it is excessive.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
That's anywhere, is that correct? Yeah, anywhere close to residential? So, okay. Anywhere that affects residential, I should say.
There
Okay.
goes my
So-
poodle.
So we're going to vote again.
We are?
We're going to vote again. So Tina, could you reset us, please? Okay. Okay. So go ahead and if you agree with the amendment, please vote aye by pressing your button. If you oppose it, please vote nay. This is just the amendment, just the amendment.
Yes.
Looky.
Such suspense. Okay, so that passes 10-1.
Okay.
We're going to pause for a second. We're good. Alderman Strauss.
Thank you.
I was
He hasn't finished.
Oh.
Yeah, one of the things, have y'all come to any thoughts, any conclusion on dealing with the dumpster, all the operations on the west side of the property?
I've talked with my client, and I've spoken with Mr. Free, and I mean, we're certainly willing to work with staff to move that as far away from Miss Alexander's home as possible within the confines of the space. I mean, it's difficult to say tonight without engineering where it could be.
And again, I don't
but
want to
we're
make
certainly-
make any promises or any assumptions. So therefore, what I'd like to do is refer this to general committee. Our next meeting will be prior to this next board meeting, and then have the ability, if we do find resolution between now and then, bringing it to the board at our next meeting.
If this,
As a motion.
if your motion gets a second, I'm sorry, we have a motion to refer this back to general committee,
I'm going to second it.
and we have a second. If this motion passes, it's going to end the conversation.
And what I'd like to do while we have the debate, if anyone has any additional questions or concerns, like for one, I'd like to have the ability to talk a little bit more about how those outdoor pens are designed and what the size are. I just have a hard time picturing those. But if anyone has any concerns they'd like to raise, to raise those so the questions can be addressed prior to that general committee meeting. And also give the opportunity to meet with the residents as well and share that information.
All the discussion right now is going to be whether or not we refer this back to general committee.
Okay, I will withdraw
Okay.
my motion.
I will come back to you at some point.
If folks would honor the intent of that, and just, if we could, if you have any concerns, just kind of look on, well, let's just, I'm going to leave the motion as it is, and then if folks have concerns, they can send them to Keith Free.
Well, we,
All the discussion is just going to be on referring it. We can't discuss the item.
I know, what I'm saying is, we'll go ahead and refer it, and if you have questions, the questions can go to Keith Free if you have concerns, and he can be the one to talk to.
That means that nobody up here can bring up
Okay,
anything
I'll
else.
step back.
Okay,
I'll step
okay.
back.
I will come back to you. That doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with your motion to refer.
I understand.
Okay, okay. Alderman Edwards, would you withdraw your second on that?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Strauss, you still have the floor.
I'm fine, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. I need to ask a clarifying question. Is the dumpster required? Okay. Okay. That helps.
Yeah, we believe the dumpster is required. It keeps it clean.
Gotcha.
Now, the commitment that we have, though, that we would like to make is that we can work, we're willing to work closely with staff to move that dumpster where it makes the most sense for the neighbor, for the restrictions of the site, and to make, obviously the staff has to be happy. We're willing to do that at the development, at the site plan level, if you would rather we do that. And we can also enhance screening if that's becomes part of the solution. We're committed to doing that. We want to be good neighbors. We're not here to, we want to be part of this community. So.
Appreciate that.
Also far as stepped away,
Yeah, so.
provided what's been asked for, so let's kind of go through what the list needs to be.
Okay. Alderman Cunningham. Thank you, Alderman Strauss.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Miss Alexander. I remember not too long ago, when your husband took a fall, your late husband, and because I work right next door to you, and where our wonderful fire department and police department were able to help him. He had a big gash on his head, yeah. So it's nice to see you again, and your neighbor too, as I know him very well. And I'm glad you're doing well. I do have several questions. I didn't realize when you sold this property, and you don't have to answer me or anything, but I understand that it's being sold under the because it was going to be commercially developed. That's my understanding. Is that right?
Chuck, do you want to answer that on her behalf, or do we want her to come to the microphone? What's the best thing?
Yeah.
Chuck, do you want to answer that?
Chuck?
Yeah, we need somebody to get to the microphone.
Would you mind?
Yeah, we need somebody to get to the microphone.
I need to clarify that question. With the understanding, when Mr. and Mrs. Alexander subdivided and sold that property, it was with the understanding that it was going to be zoned for commercial development. Is that correct?
I believe they had Wachovia Bank bought the property, and they was going to build a bank building there.
Okay, so that
And
would be a commercial.
It was intended for a bank
development,
originally.
yeah. But then there was other uses that they were able to use, and I understand that it was quasi going to could be used for this type of project. Is that right? Possibly. Okay, all right. That was my first question. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Chuck, thank you.
The dumpster is definitely a big concern of mine, okay? The other concern of mine is that back area. Is there any way we could shift that towards that other side of the building? That would be my second question. This might be something that you might want to consider. And do you have a picture?
Alderman Cunningham, we didn't quite hear that. We had a little commotion going on there.
I'm sorry.
Could you repeat the last thing you just said about the dumpster?
Oh, that the dumpster be removed, and the back part where you can have the dog, what is that going to be, like a dog run and stuff? In the back part?
Just an outdoor area. Can you put that back up here?
If we could move that further away from Miss Alexander's home. Well, they could move, it's an outdoor, oh, is that what it looks like?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask for a picture of the bill, of what it's going to look like. That's the front?
Yeah, that's the front of it. Yeah, this is the side. Over here, see, there's Miss Alexander's home right here. It's over here on this side, is how that's kind of shown. And let me see what that other one looks like. And this is the side right here. Let me see if I can.
So that would be the dumpster there on the right.
Yeah,
Okay, that's the front, that's the side.
yeah, if I could, this thing is not very friendly. Yeah, this is the dumpster right here.
Okay,
And the
that's,
home's over here
yeah.
with where this is at.
How close is that dumpster to Miss Alexander's house?
It is approximately 35 feet.
Okay, that needs to be
Yes.
removed.
So,
Or not removed, but moved
yeah.
in another area.
Alderman Cunningham,
Is
go
it-
ahead.
Well,
Okay.
hold on, is it 35? What is the, let me make sure to get
How
that
they're
distance.
going to have that much room there?
Yeah, the dumpster from the corner of the house, it's 35 feet. It's closer, it's 25 feet from the property line, is that correct? Yeah, so probably about 25 feet from the property line and 35 feet actually from her house.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, this is very,
There isn't a back shot of this, I don't believe, no.
okay, and then you would bring the animals in, oh, keep that picture up.
Keep that picture up. There we go. No, you want this one. There we go.
Okay, so the animals would arrive, the dogs would arrive in the front, right? Is there the front entrance in the front?
Yes.
I would think.
That's correct,
Front
yes.
entrance would be in the
Yeah.
front, okay. In that area there, Keith?
Yes, that's correct. It'd
To-
be in that front door area right there.
Okay,
Like that
all
might
right,
be
so
it.
what would be on the side part? Just really nothing going on there? or-
Yeah, that's just glass and windows. that
Okay,
are
but
in
that's
there.
just like parking or
Oh, right here?
the side, to right?
Oh, right here?
Yep, mhm.
Yeah, all that is, and the way this looks, I'll come back to that, but the way this looks down through here, this is what they had to do to meet the fire requirements for fire access.
So that's a driveway?
Yeah, so
parking?
otherwise, the dumpster might have ended up being like up here somewhere, but.
Oh, no.
Or, closer to the front, but they had to provide this fire access.
No,
So
we
that's what-
already have one at
yeah.
the bank.
So that's what that got pushed back through there.
Okay,
I'll go back here to that one.
yeah, do you have a picture of the back?
No.
I do.
You have a picture of the back?
Can I see a picture of the back, Marty?
Is it the same as the last page? Or the second?
Where is it?
I don't think they have a color
C1.
one to pass it around.
Here's a color one.
Yeah. You got a color one that
An actual picture of
will
it.
show it a little bit better.
Thank you, Marty.
You have one of those too? Not a color one, okay.
And there would be a fence all the way across the back?
Correct.
How high is that fence? 6 foot? 7 foot?
foot.
So if we could get the dumpster out of there, if we could move that back part over further. And the cages, or the pen, what do you call them, pens?
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about like indenting this a little bit where this
Yeah, what is
run
that?
is? Yeah, this is where that outdoor area is in the back.
What is that little gray area?
I think that might be a covered, is that a covered?
That's the turf area.
Oh, that's the turf area, where the dogs would go to the bathroom. Yeah, I think there's
Okay.
some pins.
And the pens would be outside, all of them would be outside?
Well, just for those outdoor pens. All of the pens are inside for, storing the animals, but from what I understand, from what they were explaining this evening, is these outdoor pens are just temporary where they just take a dog out, let it use the bathroom and bring it back in. But not for a particular dog to just stay outside, during the day.
And then on the right side is all
Yeah, this is where, I think there's some turf areas, and then somewhere in here, and then there's some covered area where there's water, there's a pool, or maybe, is there two
Oh.
pools? Yeah, I think there's two pools where the dogs have an outdoor pool area
Oh, that's
in their playtime.
All right, I agree with.
They're in-ground pools, and I think they have a awning over the top of
Let me
those,
see here.
sun blocker.
Bacteria, dumpster removal, drain. And then I understand there was some type of drainage issue that was going on. That's why they couldn't do the storage
No,
facility?
we really don't know what the issue was with why they didn't do the storage facility. They just
Okay, and-
end up not doing it.
And according to this picture, it looks like is this a two-story building or a one-story?
One-story building.
One story, okay,
ma'am.
good, because that storage thing was
Yeah.
big and high. Let me see, outdoor. Okay, we need to, Mayor, I agree with Alderman from Ward 2 about bringing it back to general and the planning staff
I'll
to
entertain that.
do some
I'll entertain that motion.
some more work on it, okay? I have a high regard for Miss Alexander and the neighbors, but I just need to be satisfied this is the right thing to do for the neighborhood. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Cunningham, thank you. Alderman Edwards. Yes, sir. What type of barrier is there going to be between Miss Alexander's property and Pet Suite's property? Is it an actual fence, or is that a landscaping, natural barrier?
Yeah, it looks like really what they've got, it's not shown really on this, but right in here, there are some evergreens that are here, and then that's evergreens all the way down through the little smaller ones. And then there are evergreens all the way to the front of the home, like all the way down through here where my cursor is going. So there's some pretty big trees here, and then big evergreens that will go all the way up to the front of the house to block that.
Well, would Pet Suites be willing to put a larger fence? I don't know if all the way, but at least to the front of from the front of Miss Alexander's house to the back, just extending that fence, making it a 7-foot tall wooden fence. That would be a complete barrier. That may help with the sound.
A fence to go, he's saying, would you do a fence to go right through there?
I think we'd be willing to work again with staff to make sure that that whole side is appropriately barriered. If it's a combination of greenery, a section of fence, again, trying to keep the aesthetics up. I think you can tell by the rest of the building that how it looks is important to us as well. So, and I think that helps everybody. So, as I said, if we need to go back and rework that as well as the dumpster area, we will be willing to do that. So.
Okay, I would like to see the fence. I think that'd be a good idea, and as well as the trees, the evergreens. That'd probably be a good idea. Thank you. Alderman Edwards, thank you. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The dumpster on the side there, the service road, that is 20 foot wide, going down to there, looking at this drawing you have. And how many feet from the side of the building to the side of the service road is that the distance? Is that approximately 10 foot in width there? Or?
I'm just going to guess by looking at it, 12 to 15 feet.
Okay, can we move it closer to the commercial building, away from the residents, and then apply some additional greenery and a 7-foot fence like Alderman from Ward 3?
Again, I think on that side, we were a little bit directed by, or governed by fire marshal, and so we're willing to work with staff to get where we need to get. I mean, as long as we have access, I mean, the only use for that long drive is really for the fire marshal.
Truck.
Otherwise, we could really move the dumpster, even if it was just halfway up, because it takes it away from Mrs. Alexander's backyard. So anything that planning and zoning is willing to work with us on that side, we can work that plan.
So. Yes, so that's what I was looking at, that dumpster and the width of how close it is to her property line, as well as the building was like splitting the distance, and I just wanted to slide it over to the building as close as possible if we're going to do that, and then put a 7-foot fence down through there with some additional evergreens on her side of the fence.
Yep.
So she'd have something other than a fence to look at, and have a nicer greenery. So Thank you, that's all I have.
Alderman Campbell, thank you. Alderman Petrelli.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I have a couple of questions about specifics of the project and how you operate, and then also how this went through planning. So fortunately or unfortunately for you, my background is in architectural construction, but I've also run shelter environments for many years, permanent and temporary. So the way I look at this site with the dumpster, and if I'm remembering correctly with the storage facility, Keith, didn't we move that retention pond to the front of the site, to the back of the site? Didn't that go back and forth several times?
I think it ended up in the front.
Yeah, it was in the front, yeah. So, first of all, with the dumpster, how often would that be eliminated weekly? Once a week, twice a week, every day?
I would think it's whatever typical is of the area. I'm going to say maybe twice a week, yeah.
Well, what is your business practice? It's up to you.
Well, I'll say twice a week. The reason I say that is it's really done by the operating entity, Pet Suites. But they have we can share with you, and I think we did actually along the way, where there's a whole process of how solid waste gets handled. I mean, we didn't go into detail today. For example, we talked about the dogs going, doing their business outside. Well, that gets scooped up immediately. I mean, if
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I totally understand
So
shelter environments
yeah.
and smell, and even if you triple bag that poop in the summertime, you're going to smell it. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So if it was up to me with the dumpster, I would say, hey, let's dump it 5 days a week. I know that's excessive. That's a lot to ask. But as I look at this site with the retention pond, really, any way you flip and put this dumpster, it creates kind of an undue burden on any of the properties, whether it's the owner over here, the folks on this side, or the folks in the back. So really, the only logical place from an environmental standpoint to put the dumpster is on the front of the property with screening, right? But I'm sure we don't allow that, right?
Yeah, we really.
Right, because that would be ugly. But that would quite frankly be the best place to put the dumpster from a smelling standpoint per se. That's just my 2 cents on that. But no matter how you flip this dumpster, even if you put the dumpster in the middle of the property, you would need a longer driveway, you'd have to put the retention pond up front, and then you've got are there houses right behind this property? Yeah, so either way, you're affecting somebody with a dumpster. And that's just the nature of your business. I get that. I'm not condemning you for that. I'm just saying the way the site is located, you've got a very difficult situation there. Okay, and then it looks like the outdoor kennel areas, it's a bricked 7-foot wall. Is that correct?
It's actually a vinyl fence around the outside.
Oh, it's a vinyl fence?
Yep. With brick columns.
Oh, it's
and I think
brick
there was-
columns.
Can we bring the rendering?
I don't need the, it's okay. So I guess,
-2? 2?
and then you have
Oh, I got it,
sunshade
I got it,
over it? Is that correct?
right there. Oops, sorry, tab 3 probably.
Can't see that.
So I think I can zoom out, minus.
Can you just, I can't see that far, Keith. Can you describe to me the fence? So it's basically slat vinyl fences?
It's a vinyl fence, and then on the corners, there we go. That's it. And then on the corners, on all the corners, we required them to have brick columns, and then it's just like a vinyl fence that you would see.
So is there like a chain link fence in front of the vinyl
It-
on the inside? So can a dog eat through that eventually?
No, right inside there is not, but again, the dogs aren't out there by themselves. It's a very controlled environment.
So
And
which, so like what's the most amount of dogs that could be outside at a time?
As I mentioned earlier, we could see 25 dogs out there. I don't know what the maximum is. It really
Okay,
depends.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say 20. So like who here represents operations?
Right now, it's the developer. That would be us.
Oh, okay. So if you had 20 dogs outside, what's your ratio of a human to a dog? 1, 2, 5?
My guess is if there's 20 dogs out there, there's 2 or 3 people at least out there. because they're varying-sized dogs. They've all got their little routines, because it's a very menu-driven process, so.
Sure.
And just
Well-
pick up, as you know, and there's entertainment, then there's.
Sure. Well, in addition to being concerned about the impact on the surrounding neighbors per se, just because of the use of the property, anybody that knows me knows I'm a animal lover and will go to great lengths to assist or improve an animal's life. So with the location here on this busy road, I've seen some strange activity out of animals in my lifetime. And I have a wide experience with animals and under stressful situations, meaning it's a new environment or they're out of their element that day or they're just acting like a ding-dong that day. I've seen dogs escape from areas that are escape-proof. So I guess my question would be, on a busy road like this, with this fence, is there going to be a topper over that area to prevent jumpers? I know it's a 7-foot fence, but dogs can ricochet. They can shimmy. Because if they get off of this property and they go towards Gallatin Road, they will not survive.
Yeah, again, the operator's experience is that the 7-foot fence serves the purpose of, keeping the dogs inside, with
Sure.
combination of the rest of the.
Would you
of the-
consider a topper that's below the top of the fence line that you wouldn't see it? Just something simple, or even a curved, just something to consider. I mean, we're having the discussion, so I'm going to
Give
go
us your
through the
name.
scenario.
My name's Hunter Jacobs. I'm also with Hogan Real Estate. You asked if there is chain link fencing inside of the vinyl fence, and there is.
Okay, so that was my question, was there 2 layers? Because they will chew through that fence
So-
within an hour.
The closest layer is a large pen. It's got canine turf, and that will be an area for the larger dogs to play.
Okay.
Supervised.
Yeah.
So they try to keep the breeds and the sizes of the dogs, and that's why you'll see, if we can bring up the site plan here.
Y'all don't have the detail for that, right? I know this is just a preliminary package. I just didn't know if you had a standard detail. Sure.
Yeah, so these are broken up into, for larger dogs to play, medium dogs to play, and smaller dogs to play. These pens in the back, these are the potty relief areas for the morning.
Gotcha.
But these also serve the purpose, they have a lot of very small dogs that can't mingle with the larger dogs.
So they just take them out.
Well,
bring
it's
them up here.
actually, it's an à la carte service. You can pay for a Pet Suites employee to actually take your Chihuahua off, that you don't want your Chihuahua on socializing with 5 other dogs, to these small areas in the back, and they will play with that dog one-on-one. So in addition to it being a potty area, from time to time, it will be used for one-on-one play, mostly for smaller dogs.
Sure.
Just a couple other items I want to clarify.
Hold on just a second. We're gonna let her continue to ask questions, okay?
Oh, no, I'd like to hear what he has to say about operations. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. I'm not an operations expert, but I have worked with Pet Suites for many years, and I've done projects for Pet Suites in multiple states. These are truly first-class facilities. We make a substantial investment into these facilities, so it's not going to be, there's a stigma with a lot of these kennels and other boarding facilities. These facilities operate, they know how to run these facilities, in terms of, in terms of how the pins work in the back. We're happy to share that detail with you all. We weren't trying to withhold anything from anybody this evening.
No,
Yeah.
I'm not trying, I'm just,
Okay.
yeah, I'm probably your most conservative vote up here when it comes to a usage like this. So that was my main concern, was the double fence line. If you have that, great, because there's just no way that would work, especially in this location. So I think this is a lovely project. Honestly, I would have loved to have seen it in our ward, in the commercial area, where there's less residential folks still around, and also on the main street, because this is a very needed business in our city. So if this doesn't pass in this location, please consider looking at Ward 1. I'm happy to take you around. So that's the end of my questions regarding operations, but I had a question for Keith, which was, in reading the report, seemed like there was a lot of confusion. I see things like somebody misspoke, they'd only been in touch, this is that. And then somebody expressed concern that the vote to recommend approval was taken without full understanding of the communication between blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So it seems like, what was the general atmosphere of this when this came through planning? It seems like there was a lot of confusion. I haven't
Right.
seen the meeting. Maybe Alderman
Yeah.
Woodcock can answer that, if you
Go
want
ahead.
to.
I'm happy to. There was not a lot of controversy. No one signed up to speak.
But I see that there was confusion.
Yeah, and I'm about to explain that.
All right,
So
go for it.
From my seat, no one signed up to speak. A representative said that they had communicated to the neighbors after I asked questions, and then we proceeded to vote, and there was one no vote. They left, and the residents were sitting with the developer, so in my mind, I thought there was, an acceptable plan submitted. They left, they came back in, Marty, said, hey, there was a misunderstanding. Actually, we had not spoken with the neighbors. There was, it was an honest mistake, in my opinion.
Sure.
We did not re-vote. I mentioned in my report last meeting that it probably would have changed the vote count, but not the end result. We allowed the citizens to speak after the vote, and that's the best I remember, Keith.
That's correct. The chairman reopened the public hearing. And
After the vote?
After the vote, and
That
then.
seems a little bit
Yeah.
dysfunctional.
And then the chairman gave the opportunity for, it was through Robert's Rules of Order, since we were still in session, and the public hearing had been closed and had already been voted on, but given that information had just came to light before the end of the meeting, then the opportunity was given for any citizens there that wanted to speak, opened the public hearing back up. 2 citizens did speak, and then the chair did give the opportunity for given the new information, that if anyone on the commission wanted to reopen the vote, but nobody chose to do so.
Chuck, do you want to address that?
Yes, we
Come up here, come up here. Thank you.
We were gave the opportunity to speak, but we didn't know, Pet Suits or no one. They talked to Charles Kimbrough, and from that, they got that the citizens was on board with this. They never talked to us. And so we came up here to talk, but we didn't even know what was going on. So how can you talk about or be for or be against something if you don't even know what's going on? No one ever told us anything. It's just, we came here to find out what was going on, And next thing I know, we're out here, and I told one of the lawyers that, y'all didn't tell the truth. They voted thinking that the citizens, my neighbors was for this, And I said, this is it's just not true, you didn't tell the truth. And they told me, said, well, you didn't sign up for citizen comments. You can't go back in there and tell them. And I said, well, you just watch me. I'm going back in there. And then he decided that he'll come back in here and, tell what's going on. But planning passed it thinking that the citizens were for it or didn't have anything against it. And that's what happened. They talked to Charles Kimbrough, and he gave them the thumbs up. They thought everything was on board. They came here and talked, gave their presentation, and they didn't know who we were. I guess they thought they were here and nobody from the neighborhood was there. And that's what happened at the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
So I'd like to propose an amendment if this project passes for this location, and I think it creates an undue burden on your business, but to protect the surrounding neighbors, I think we have to do it. I'd like to first add an amendment that your dumpster is empty 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, however you work it out, but that the smell is an undue burden on the neighbors there. That's a formal amendment, Mayor, and then I'm not done.
Got a motion
I'll second.
in a second. Let me ask Keith.
Yes.
It's the same thing. Is this an amendment to their site plan, which would be a note?
Yeah, it'd be the same thing with Alderman Sprouse's. If the amendment passes, we'll just make sure to put a note on the final development plan. We'll have the developer do that.
Okay.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion. Who seconded that?
I did.
Okay. You good? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, so the motion is, Alderman Petrelli.
To empty the dumpster minimum 3 times a week.
Okay.
And by empty, I don't mean like scoop it out and put it in cans. I mean have a professional waste company remove it from the site.
Okay. Hold on one second, Alderman Robertson. Anybody else that I have in the queue that wishes to speak on this? If not, I'm going to go to Alderman Robertson to speak on this. Alderman Strauss.
I appreciate the spirit of the amendment. I think the timing of it is we don't even know where the dumpster is going to be located. I think that perhaps before we start getting into smaller points about the day-to-day operation of the business, that we go back to what half hour ago I proposed, which is an hour ago I proposed, which is we send this back to staff, we send it back to general committee. If you have questions about the operation of the facility, more detail about the structure itself, that we address those to our staff compile that, we work with the developer, with the business itself, we have opportunity to have those discussions with the residents, and then it comes back to general committee, and then from general committee, it could be even the same night. If it looks like we have a resolution, it comes back to this board at our next meeting. I think that we getting into a situation where after 10 o'clock, we're being asked to make decisions about engineering solutions and waste management solutions and things that I'm not prepared to make a decision about because I'm not an expert in those things. And I really would like our staff to have the opportunity to work through those issues and make a recommendation to us. So therefore, I'm going to bring back my motion to defer.
We can't do that right now. Well,
yeah.
Your motion is to just defer this amendment, though.
Well, would the maker of the amendment consider withdrawing it?
No, because if your amendment to defer it fails, then we're back to voting on the project. And I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not trying to get up in your business, but I mean, if you have a good faith effort, because I mean, I'm going to repeat it again, there is no place to put this dumpster that has minimal impact on any surrounding neighbor except for the front of the property.
I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to say that I don't think that there's a way that anybody on this board could answer that, could state that completely sure of the situation.
I can. I've run multiple shelter environments, and I have a background in architectural construction.
Here's what we're going to do. Alderman Petrelli, I'm going to come back to you in just a second, but I'm going to go to Alderman Robertson.
I'm going to continue speaking against the amendment then. My question then, if I'm not going to make this, is I think that we need to be very careful about the level of the amendments that we're making, the list of the amendments we're making. We could unintentionally do something that is counterproductive to the overall project. I would rather us consider everything as a whole once all considerations are made. I don't know if they may already have 3 days, they may have 4 days, they may have daily pickup. We don't know. We're just getting into situations to where we're raising concerns that we don't know if there are concerns, and then we're trying to resolve them, and I think we should just go ahead, and we're spending a lot of time on the nitpicky. I ask you to vote against the amendment, consider the concern, and then at an appropriate time, anyone who would like to make an amendment to defer, or I'll make the amendment to defer, and that will give us the opportunity to consider all of these issues and all of these concerns at a more appropriate time when we have the ability to talk with people on staff and experts who can help us with that. So I ask you to vote against the amendment.
Alderman Robertson.
I really didn't want to speak on this subject, but it seems to me that the original process was flawed. And if this was a court of law, it's not, but if this was a court of law, it would be remanded back to a lower court. So I'm almost of the opinion that another option would be to remand this back to the Planning Commission, go through the correct process, allow people, the neighbors to talk, and then they bring the recommendation back to us and we proceed. So, I mean, it was a flawed process, I think, the way that it came about. So with that, I'll refer back to the chair.
Alderman Waters on the amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. Ma'am, I'm sorry that I opened up a can of worms. I know you want to get home, and Alderman Rush, I know it's your bedtime too, so. But, you know, this is something that's, this is something that's very close to my heart. But listen, Mary, you've got to get back to Robert Rules of Order when we speak. That they speak. It doesn't matter how many times we push this button, we don't get recognized. And Robert Rules of Order states how that's supposed to operate.
Okay.
Am I right?
I will do better.
Okay.
We're on the amendment, Dave.
Pardon?
We're on an amendment.
I got the floor, ma'am.
Mayor, are you going to take
Sir,
control
I
of the
didn't mean
meeting?
to, I didn't, pardon me?
Alderman Waters, go ahead.
I didn't mean to say you didn't have a first-class operation. Don't get me wrong. That's not it at all. I'm looking out for the residents around that location. You mentioned earlier that you take the dogs out to the back where it's all fenced. It's not.
Alderman Waters, can we come back to that? Can we deal with the dumpster first? And I'll come back to you. We have an amendment, so we've got to take care of that. So you get pushed out of order. So if you want to speak about emptying the dumpster 3 times a week, we can do that now, or I can come back to you after we dispose of this amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
We have amendment on the floor. Does anybody else wish to speak specifically on this amendment? Alderman Petrelli apparently wishes to.
I'm sorry. I'm willing to withdraw the amendment if you want to have further conversations in this at general committee, but I would just ask that if this passes or we vote on this, that you would just, if this, passes, please consider whatever means necessary, removing the garbage. I mean, even if you're hand carting it out and having a private vendor take it out the front. And if it doesn't, I think this is a fabulous project. I'm not trying to be negative in any way. Come look in Ward 1. Come, because we need something like this over there. Thank you.
The motion has been withdrawn. Alderman Cunningham, you seconded that? Okay. Alderman Woodcock and then Alderman Waters.
Thank you. I have questions about operations as well. I'm not sure who would like to answer those, but my first question is, roughly how many employees we have during the day?
Eight to 10 employees probably during the daytime.
And at night?
It's actually closed at night.
So there's no one there?
Correct.
And so all animals leave when you
No,
close?
the animals are inside. There's a security system, and obviously a call process, and they use this throughout the country, so it's as quiet as it can be.
That's great. What's your max capacity for animals?
What's the number on these ones? Yeah, it's probably less. It's in the range of 200, but we can answer that question to get an exact number. So there's been some slight changes in the prototype, so that's why I'm being a little hesitant.
Okay.
So,
in this location, what is the total number of pens or compartments, whatever you want to call them, that will house dogs day or night? Inside and outside?
25. Can we answer all those at the same time for you? Yeah. So.
Okay. Can you give me a rough estimate tonight?
Yeah, it's 125.
125
sort of
pens
ballpark,
inside
yeah.
and outside.
Yeah.
And it was mentioned that the fire marshal more or less determined where the dumpster was going. Staff, what was the reason for the long driveway to the dumpster?
That's access to the, for the fire truck.
I get that, to access the rear of the building?
Yeah, it's, I think it's like, the fire truck has to have access, within 150 feet of
So
any
that
part of the building, so I think
Pretty
that's
much is
probably
going to
where that
determine
came.
the dumpster site.
Yes.
so there's not another location that it can go.
Well, other than could go maybe back further, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Closer to the other homes.
Yes.
In the back. Okay.
Yes.
All right, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Woodcock. Alderman Waters. You're good?
Oh, I'm not on the amendment now.
You're fine. You can speak on the main motion.
I can go. Okay. Where was I at? You said there's nobody in the building at night, just the dogs. Well, that makes a lot of sense, don't it? Who's going to keep them quiet? You don't have to get up. No, that's okay. That's a silly question. You don't have to respond to that. But I'm just, you're talking like, no, they're going to be quiet tonight.
If you're going to answer it, you got to come up there. Thanks, Mike.
If you're going to answer, get up. But I don't. No, that's okay. Just stay where you are. 200 dogs? Was that your estimate? Maximum? Good.
Thanks.
And you take.
So that is sort of July 4th. I mean, they typically don't operate at 100% capacity. Most time of the year, they're operating probably more like at 25% capacity, believe it or not. It's July 4th, it's, the Thanksgiving weekend, spring break, that's where they, that's just kind of what happens to the operation.
Let me be sure I understand one of you a while ago said something. You take the dogs out to the back, to the pens to walk? Did I misunderstand that?
The dogs walk inside the outdoor play area, which is kind of L-shaped around the building.
At the back? On the side?
On the side, in the back.
Now, in the back is where we got the 16 pens, right?
Well, but there's walkways in there. It's not like they're all real
But
tight
you don't
together.
take the dogs out and just leave them out there?
No.
Oh, you got to stay with them.
Well, no, you got to keep them, stay with them. You got to keep them inside the fence. Yeah, I know.
Keith, can I ask you a question? Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be through here at midnight. Keith, in Nashville, they have what they call a wall that's soundproof. I know you know what I'm talking about. I hope you do.
Along the federal highways?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any way possible that we get something like that up that driveway for this residence?
I think we can definitely look at doing something to increase, specifically, we could maybe look at doing something with a fence or a wall, but specifically maybe more landscaping there. We don't want to get too crazy and build just some highway wall there, because it'd be detrimental visually, and it may not even necessarily, whatever the issues would be from noise. I guess it could diminish it a little, but that'd be a big wall, and typically, it'd be a wall probably 15 feet to have any impact, on blocking, and that'd be a pretty big structure that would be there.
Okay.
But we'd be better to looking at doing something with maybe more trees and evergreens, and then maybe some wall elements in there, but not a solid wall element, in order to do something, if we were trying to minimize the sound.
We just have to come back to planning like my colleague here said just a minute ago, and let's start over.
Well, it could. Now, the process that we went through, there was nothing wrong with the process. There was certainly some confusion, as was shared by what the developers shared about their communication with the residents prior to the Planning Commission vote. But as far as notices and all of our procedures, everything's been done correct. But certainly this body, if they determined they wanted to, you could take it back to General Committee, or you could just say, hey, Planning Commission, can you start all over, with this one? If you took it back to the Planning Commission, you probably would want to be very specific, because our new zoning ordinance, the changes that we made, is that change of the final development plan would still have to come back, but the change of use itself in our new revised ordinances, the way that they were is that the planning commission could determine whether it went to BOMA or not, and then now we've changed it where it just stops at the planning commission. But the final development plan would still have to come forward, so there's kind of two different things. But if you took it back to the planning commission and said, hey, just start over and go through that process again and come back, you just may want to be specific that for the final development plan and the for the change of the use, that it would come back to you.
How would we do that as far as being specific?
If you did that, if the board determined to do that, it would be something along the lines of we'd like to revert this back to the planning commission and request that they go back through the process of the public hearing for the final development plan and the adding of the use, and that a recommendation, that be revised, and a recommendation then be forwarded through the proper process of the general committee, and then on to, through that process, through BOMA, if you did that.
Okay.
Or you could, as Alderman Sprouse was saying, you could just say, hey, work with staff, go back to general committee, and then come back out of general committee answering some of these questions. And it could be done,
Yeah.
it could be done that way.
I like my colleague's proposal, but I understand what you're saying. I yield back, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Waters. Alderman Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we defer this back to the general committee, that the staff could work with the developers to answer our questions and come back to the general committee and bring it back out and bring it back to Bowman at the appropriate time. Thank you. That's my motion.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Do y'all want to include any instructions with that?
Go to Keith.
Not necessary at all?
Keith,
We can,
Just send questions to Keith.
would you like for us to send our questions to you via email, or?
I think one thing, you can send your questions to me, and I'll make sure to coordinate that with the developer. I guess I have one question would be.
Yes, sir.
Well, definitely, we notified the residents about the meeting tonight, even though that wasn't a public hearing, just because that's not typical that we would do that. We can do that again and let them know that there won't be a public hearing, but let them know when that is going to be on the BOMA agenda, so that we do those mail-outs again.
Can we have more than 5 minutes?
Yeah.
The gentleman behind you is asking a question.
Yeah, we can probably do that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
we could, if you wanted to, when it comes back, it would, I mean, it's not typical, but we could go ahead and just do a public hearing and
You want to include that
we
in
could
your
do
motion?
notices.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll address
We're
this.
going to restate the motion, Alderman Campbell.
I'd like to refer this back to the general committee. I'd like for our staff to work with the developer to answer our questions as aldermen that have been stated here tonight, and to work with our general committee to bring forward, bring this project back from the general committee to BOMA for future vote.
With a public hearing.
And hold a public hearing.
Who made the second?
We'll do notice.
I did.
Okay, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to pause just a second, okay?
Yeah.
I just need y'all to pause just a second. You good? Okay. Alderman Sprouse.
Appreciate the motion. Just let folks know, you're not going to have to wait till general committee meeting to have some information. I want to make sure stuff is being presented to me, that we get feedback and it's an open dialogue, and that we have the opportunity, even if we need to add time to the general committee, to have it start early, that we have time for discussion at the committee level before it even gets to the board as well. So hopefully we can resolve as much of this before it even gets to a public hearing at the board level.
Alderman Sprouse, thank you. Keith, we did not put a time on this. With zoning applications, rezoning applications, we have a state requirement that we hear those, I think, in a reasonable time. Do we have that with this?
The developer has agreed
Then we don't have to
to
answer that
go through
question.
this process, is that? So basically, if you don't agree to it, then we probably need to make a decision. So if you agree to it, then that just gives us where we're not under a time crunch. This is still this is a month process where by the time we get to general committee, it's going to be 2 weeks from now, and then the meeting 2 weeks after that.
Do we
could be back here.
Hold on.
I think the instructions are important that we include with the motion. So even if they agree to it, I'm going to ask that we continue with the motion that's here, unless you want to rescind that.
We can do it the same night.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to come back to you.
We could do it, okay. If we could do it the same night, that'd be great.
Time frame it?
Yeah,
Okay.
if that's, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, I can't put them on the spot
No,
with this, though.
2 weeks from
Do we have a state obligation to hear this in a reasonable time, or to consider this in a reasonable time?
No, this is not a rezoning.
Thank you, okay. Alderman Woodcock.
You guys just touched on what I was about to ask. So it's great for us that it's on the same night. It's great for the developer it's on the same night, but potentially a brand-new plan could be presented at general and then voted here 30 minutes later with the citizens having 30 minutes of knowledge. So I would not be comfortable having it the same night. I would like the citizens to have time to see what is actually going to be presented and voted on.
And I think it may squeeze me a little bit too tight on getting my notices out for a public hearing. I can't remember the days, but 2 weeks might be tight for me to do it. Since we're doing a hearing, if we weren't doing a hearing, then it wouldn't be an issue. But doing a hearing, then I think that that does come into play. And then there was a question.
Hold on one second. Alderman Woodcock, anything else?
No, I'd like that to be either amended from the motion that it would be general in 2 weeks and then BOMA 2 weeks after that.
We can do that.
I can't do that.
Okay. Alderman Campbell, you made the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Cunningham,
I can't do that.
you seconded it? Okay.
That's why I'm saying I can't do that.
We can't require them to bring it back in 2 weeks. We can let them know that we're not likely to hear it the same night.
Yeah.
We can't make you bring it back in 2 weeks. If you want to wait a month,
From tonight.
that's going to be up to you.
It'll come back here in a month, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So a minimum of 2 weeks, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah, minimum 2 weeks.
Okay, you good?
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Woodcock, you good? Okay.
Yeah, general, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
good with that.
I've got Keith's going to speak, and then we'll come back to you. I think you want to finish that point?
Yeah, there was just a question from one of the residents
Okay.
that, on how long they would be able to speak at the public hearing.
Public hearing.
So it's not 5 minutes, right?
Nope.
Yeah, that's not 5 minutes. You can speak, okay.
Okay, appreciate that. Alderman Sprouse.
I'm not happy with putting any set time frame on it, because if we have something that can be resolved, that's happy to all parties are involved, or as close as we could possibly get, let's go ahead and make the resolution. Now, the interesting thing, Mr. Woodcock is asking that we can hold it. If we had a situation, we go through the process, we go to general committee, we work on it, and everything looks good, then we should be able to go ahead and vote on it if everything looks good. If Mr. Woodcock has any questions about that, he has an ability that none of us have on this board. As sponsor, he could ask for it to be withdrawn from that night's agenda. I mean, that's one of those things, but I don't think we would even get to that point, because if I'm not comfortable with it in general committee, I mean, I was the one who first said, let's defer this. If we don't accomplish anything in deferring it by 2 weeks, I'm not going to rush it. I just don't want to have a false schedule placed upon it that we couldn't resolve it in a time in which it could be resolved.
Right.
Okay. I want to have the motion restated. So help us out, Erica.
You could restate the motion.
Yes, I'd like to defer this back to the general committee to allow them to review this particular project with our staff, to work with city staff, to answer the questions that members of BOMA have brought forth, to find some resolution to those questions, and to bring it back to BOMA. And if it can be done in 2 weeks, I'm happy with that. And if it needs to be pushed off till the 4th week, that's fine too. And have a public hearing, but
Yeah.
I'd like to have it done as soon as possible.
The public hearing
Okay.
notices.
And it sounds like you're removing that 2-week minimum restriction between general and here.
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Cunningham, do you agree with
Yes.
that? Okay. Alderman Woodcock, do you want to?
If we can get there, I mean, sure.
The public hearing in that time frame.
Yeah, I think if we went ahead and, the only thing about it is, and it's cool, but we would be letting the residents know there will be a public hearing that night on it. So really, we could do that because, we could do it because we could still have a public hearing.
But you have to have
On
it
it.
advertised in 14 days ahead of time.
No, it's just mailed out notice. So we could,
But this is also not a
Hold
required
on, we've
public
got
hearing.
we've got a difference of fact here.
yeah.
Yeah. Kay, you want to come up here and help us?
No, it's just a mailed out notice is, I think, the requirement on it. I'd have to check.
Okay. hold
No,
on.
this is not a required public hearing. That's,
Okay. So you feel,
Yeah.
you feel comfortable that if you, so when are we going to hold the public hearing? When are we
Well-
going to schedule the public hearing for?
you'd have to schedule the public hearing for 2 weeks from now. Because you'd be assuming that it goes through general committee and comes back that night. Because otherwise, the residents wouldn't be aware, they wouldn't know that it was coming up that night.
Okay.
But,
Which
but-
means we're
but this
committing
is-
general committee to discuss
Yeah.
this within 2 weeks, and we're committing to a public hearing, and we're committing the board to attend that public hearing.
Right. And this is not a required public hearing, so this
Right.
is not a procedurally required one. So it's maybe a little bit different, but
I've got to go to Daryl next. Okay, hold on one second. Alderman Woodcock.
I'm okay with everything. I'm not trying to throw a wrench in. I'm just trying to protect the citizens. So as Alderman Sprouse said, if there's dramatic changes at general committee, or the plan that was voted on at general was presented that day, and that's all the time the citizens have had to study it and ask questions, then I will pull it at BOMA. I want everyone in this room to know that. That's a great plan, and I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
So, but I don't want anyone mad at me when I pull it
Right.
in 2 weeks, if that happens. Like, I don't want to pull it, but I will.
We'll do it.
Alderman Woodcock, thank you.
It's going to happen 2 weeks from now.
Alderman Sprouse, I've got your, okay. We have a motion on the floor
How are we going to review it?
to,
Yeah.
we have a motion on the floor to refer this to general committee with the intent that we will hold a public hearing in 2 weeks, and the item will come to the board in 2 weeks. With that public hearing, we're going to use our regular public hearing rules, which allow more than 5 minutes for people to speak. Nobody is shaking their head no that I got this wrong. But Keith, you have a look on your face like you want to explain something.
Now, I think we can do all that. I think the residents that have expressed concern, their concern will be, hey, if it changes radically, they don't have time to really look at it, but, then we'll pull it if it changes radically. And then I think what we're all thinking is it changes about the dumpster, the timing of the dumpster, where the dumpster's located, trying to do something to make the sound deadening better on that side of the property where Mrs. Alexander lives. So those really would be the only things that would change, and so those things could be covered that night. It would just be those few things, and all the other issues that were concerns would still probably be those same concerns that evening. It would just be, here's some ways that could minimize some of the concerns.
Thank you, Keith. Alderman Sprouse.
I think one of the things to do, and this is a commitment, just want to let you know, for information for us to make a decision on Tuesday, it's prepared and presented to us on a Friday, which means for that stuff to be prepared by Friday, it actually is put together, in some cases, days ahead of time. I'm going to be working with these guys on a regular basis, and what I hear from them, I'm going to get from you. If you will, when this meeting ends, because this is, I think, the last item on the agenda, come up and meet me. I will get email addresses. Everything that I get as we go through the process, I will share with you. And definitely, when we get what the final proposal is going to be in Friday, I will have copies of, I will share that with you as well. So you will see it when I see it. So let's work through this. Thank you, Keith.
Okay, thank you very much.
All those in favor of the motion to refer this to general committee with the intention of it coming back in 2 weeks to this board and holding a public hearing, with certainly the allowance that Alderman Woodcock have the opportunity to withdraw it as a sponsor, please signify by saying aye by pressing the button in front of you, or if you're opposed, please signify by saying nay. Okay, that passes 11-0. Could you hold that up there for just a second, Jeff? I want to explain one thing, and I've said this periodically, that our planning commission, a representative from the board to the planning commission, it's sort of been a practice of mine that that person is expected to sponsor anything that comes from planning commission that has to come to this board. If that person chooses not to, then I typically go to the person who represents that area. If that person chooses not to, then I do it. But Alderman Woodcock is our representative to the planning commission. That's why he is representing that. It doesn't mean that he's for or against this. So that passes 11-0. Next on our agenda is reading of Resolution 2020-9. This is a resolution to approve a final development plan, 2020-10. This is a resolution amending the job classification list and pay tables. Alderman Sprouse. We have a motion and a second. Okay. Our second was from Alderman Campbell? Yes. Okay, thank you. All those in favor of Resolution 2020-10, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Press the buttons. Sorry, Tina.
That's okay.
You haven't trained this monkey quite yet. Whoa. Let's do that again. All those in favor of Resolution 2020-10, please signify by saying aye by pressing your button. Those opposed, please say nay. We have 5 people not vote at all. Good point. Okay, and that passes unanimously. Is this not?
Yeah.
Okay, do we consider this, or is this the first time? This, I'm sorry?
Just consideration.
So do we vote on this tonight, or do we? Okay, sorry. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a motion to adjourn in a second. I'm just going to take a voice vote on this. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say no. We're adjourned. Hey, Robert, can I bug you for a second?